Hello, you are very welcome to the Overlap Rugby Podcast. I'm Shane, that's Daragh.
Hello.
Two brothers discussing all things rugby through the lens of Leinster and Ireland.
That is we.
Yes, we are back after a brief hiatus, which, we were going on with following the international rugby. It kind of took a rescheduling break and we were a little fatigued post-Lions tour, but we're back with episode 104 here to get into the kind of meatier side of the Rugby Championship now that all of that rescheduling and scheduling conflict is done and the teams are en route in there. So we have some games to get into and some games to look back on as well. We're going to start, of course, with Bledisloe, which, although it's decided as of last week, there is still Bledisloe 3, and as we were saying in our last show, there's still intrigue because it's a part of the Rugby Championship, so there's table points up for grabs in that one. So we'll look back on the defeat in Bledisloe 2 before going into our meaty preview for that game.
Absolutely. We're also going to take a look just back in time at the Springbok Argentina games. There was obviously those first 2 weeks. I think on our last show we were previewing that first game, so we'll obviously look back as the Springboks enjoyed a relatively easy time of it against the Pumas. They didn't sleep on them as we feared they might, but they also had plenty enough for them. So we'll look back on those games as well, and box off the Rugby Championship then as that season really starts to heat up.
Yeah, absolutely. But there's also some Rugby World Cup 2023 intrigue down in Tier 2. The Americas 1 slot is still up for grabs, and we have a North American derby as Canada will be hosting the USA this weekend in the first of a two-legged affair. It'll be in Infinity Park in America the next week, but they're doing it 2 legs to decide who gets to face off against Uruguay, and the winner of that will be America's 1 going to the World Cup. So that's a meaty enough clash, and we're gonna break that down and preview that as well later on in the show.
Yes, absolutely. And we're also going to just park the international footy then and move on and look at club footy, because there's plenty of intrigue there. The Currie Cup is finally entering into its semi-final period as the URC gets ready to get underway next week. We have Top Couture's games coming up this weekend, and I think we're all just very excited for our own domestic seasons to return up here in North. Actually, after the summer that was, it's going to be great to get those games back. So we're going to touch on across all of club rugby and look back on all the news of the week as we do to wrap up the show.
Absolutely. And if you're new here, please do feel free to like and subscribe and share it with your rugby loving friends. If you're returning, great to have you back as well. But it really does help the videos when you do kind of engage like that as well. We're keeping that drive for 2K alive. We're hoping we'll be past it by the next show. That'd be nice as well. Little landmarks, but also comments as well is what we love on this channel. We love a good discourse in the comments section. So yeah, if you have any thoughts or corrections or any points of umbrage or points of agreement or any opinions yourself, please do drop them down below, because we do enjoy that engagement.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks to all who watch. We're also going to move on though now. I think we can, what do we say, we've had enough ado.
Yeah.
We're going to look at the Rugby
Championship. Absolutely. There's a fair bit, obviously we're a little gap in it as well. We had 3 games happen in the interim since our last show as well, but we are going to, rather than go in sequence as we normally do, we're going to focus on Bledisloe first, sticking with the trans-Tasman stuff, as we're going to have the last one of that particular clash this weekend as well. But first we do have to look back. Sorry to any Wallaby fans watching, but 57-22 in Bledisloe 2 in Eden Park was the way that one went down, and a record score total for the All Blacks on New Zealand soil, I believe. Just a one-sided drubbing, which was not what we wanted, but possibly not wholly unexpected. It was another third quarter from hell for the Wallabies, and it was another fatigued but still awesome Michael Hooper at full time. He was surrounded by very giddy All Blacks all over the place. You had Brodie Retallick touching down from a coast to coaster. You had all kinds of positive showings and positive things from the All Blacks, and a little bit head scratching from the Wallaby point of view, because they weren't that far away, but when the All Blacks turn it on, they can really make you look very, very average for large periods of the game. It was that third quarter, they just blew them away.
Yeah, I mean, it was one-sided. The All Blacks were pretty lethal. They managed to contain what the Wallabies were trying to do at the scrum, and for the most part contain them all. Yeah. They were quite physical, quite tough. They were the match for them in that department, and then it was just capitalising on Wallaby errors. I mean, that Brodie Retallick try you referenced, while excellent, came off a really poor Lachie Swinton drop, and it was just one example of a few. A curious stat which might illustrate the Wallaby frustrations at the moment was that they had 58% possession and 63% territory. Wow. They dominated those major stats. But when the Wallabies were on the ball, there was always danger, but it was equal parts danger that the All Blacks might score and that the Wallabies might score. Yeah. They didn't look after it well enough. They didn't manage the game well enough. they're just going a little too wide too soon. I thought in moments Tate McDermott was running a nice offense.
Yes, he was. Yeah, he was lethal enough on the fringe as well. He found some seams there, which the All Blacks do leave that little bit of space for the scrum half to exploit, and he was good at exploiting that.
But in other moments, they were throwing reckless passes. They were dropping the ball. They weren't
between
quite.
Lolosio, Tamua, and Paisami, between the two tests, all three of them threw 7-point intercepts to the All Blacks, and that's your kind of midfield line distributing axis there, just flicking floating passes into
exactly.
All Black wingers' hands.
They were trying to get wide soon, and the All Blacks had a read on it. Those sort of floated passes, the Finn Russell balls. They'd throw them too often for starters. Like the Tamua one in particular was just an absolute throw and hope off the left hand into a space that wasn't unmarked. I mean, it wasn't open space they were firing, and the balls are just too floated. And they're not working. They weren't working the space well, and that kind of impatience was hurting them. And yet, when they did sort of settle down and get quick ball and throw some offloads in and around the tight areas, they actually had some purchase. But equal parts, sometimes they drop the ball, and the All Blacks just punish their mistakes as they do. And I think the All Blacks, from the flip side of just looking at it from the Wallabies point of view, the All Blacks are really encouraging at the moment in that they're very much getting back to their roots. They're still very physical. They're still wily at the line-out time. I thought Whitelock had an excellent couple of games.
He did.
Aaron Smith is still a bullet passer as well, but in the main they're sort of going back to where they were good. They're soaking up pressure and exploiting on the counter-attack. And the only thing I would say is that that's kind of a model that has held true for the All Blacks in these trans-Tasman games. But it'll be curious to see if they can build on that once they go into the other games as well. I think they'll be very positive with how the season has gone so far.
It's all bigging up towards that 100th test against the Springboks when that comes. That's what we're all kind of whetting our appetites for, because it's such a meaty clash. But yeah, I think in terms of what they've found, the All Blacks, it was very impressive. Again, they're showing from what we think could be their centre partnership for many years to come if they keep fit and keep combining that way, because both Ioane and Havili had lovely moments of distribution, of vision. Both of them grabbed a try in this game as well. It was just very, very encouraging from them. Like that flat pass from Ioane across to his brother actually out wide during that sequence, that was the Brodie Retallick try, was just lovely vision from him as well. And it's like, for a converted winger to be doing that, to have those skills, it's testament to what the All Blacks are kind of all about. They
haven't quite had that in the midfield in recent years, and they really do at the moment. Widespread distribution, always looking at the offense. It is very encouraging. And the critique would be that the tries are still coming just from soaking and striking and then striking off defence. There's a lot of defensive tries coming out of this All Black team, and they do still kick it a fair amount. Like, they didn't have most of the possession, they soaked and then they struck.
That's true.
But the lethal nature of them, 57 points racked up, that is a very, very handsome return. Although I would say they were kind of a little bit maybe helped by the ref for one of those tries towards the end of it. That annoyed me.
It
was a very irritating sequence. When the Wallabies were
that the
on
Will
top
Jordan
of the
one where it broke away with nice sequence of offloading after?
No, it was the one from the scrum that the Wallabies had a scrum, dominated the scrum, absolutely shoved the All Blacks off it, and then he reset it. And didn't pin the All Blacks, or didn't pin the All Blacks or give the Wallabies their penalty, and then on the next scrum he got all fussy on a pre-engage and gave the All Blacks a free kick. And then on the ensuing scrum, because all this time the All Blacks were under pressure, and then in the ensuing scrum Aaron Smith just put the ball in to his number 8 and picked it up again instantly, and the ref waved play on and the All Blacks scored a try. So you just wasn't giving the Wallabies their scrum penalties when they actually had them on the field towards the end of the game.
It's a trans-Tasman game, you have to expect a little bit of scrums.
There was a little bit of score paddery going on there, but in the main I think they were good for the comfortable
for the margin that it was, and just the nature of it as well. Like one thing I would say, which has to be mentioned, is that the official attendance of 25,121 was a significant drop on the week before, and probably illustrative of why they like to move the tests around. They don't like to do back-to-back in the same against the same opponents in the same stadium in the same city. There's just a bit of fatigue, especially with ticket prices the way they were reported and stuff. It wasn't a great look for what was a decisive Bledisloe for their team claiming a Bledisloe title. It was just unfortunate to see Eden Park a little bit kind of not full to it, and it's like, despite a great showing from their team, it feels like there is a little bit of weariness in the New Zealand public from just all these trans-Tasman games, of which we do have one more to look ahead to this weekend, but yeah, just it seems they're a little bit fatigued from it. Between this and the Super Rugby trans-Tasman stuff, they're kind of have itchy feet to just test themselves against other opposition, I think. So I'm looking forward to when that starts to happen later in the Rugby Championship.
Sure, but in the main, I did enjoy the game. I thought the All Blacks, I'm very much enjoying seeing the All Blacks be the All Blacks again, and it was a great win for them, and congratulations to them for taking home the Bledisloe Cup as they did so very well.
Yes.
I would give the shout out, I think you were mentioning Michael Hooper as well in the context of that Wallaby defeat. I mean, I thought he was really, really good again, every touch a good one on offense and defense. He's found an extra level in terms of his physicality and the contact on both sides of the ball. He's driving people back. His technique is sharp and on point.
His telepathy with McDermott is quite encouraging as well. It's one of the rationales for just keeping McDermott in there. One of the several, because he's the form scrummy for them. But they actually do have a good little telepathy in terms of both on defense and offense. We've seen it in the last few weeks. But yeah, Hooper is captain fantastic for them. It's a shame that he's kind of looking a little bit Parise-ish out there rather than
he was the last week. I don't think that's a true margin between the sides, but I do think the Wallabies need to tighten up, because there's no side in rugby that punishes you for mistakes the All Blacks, and that was just one of those games in Eden Park where that happens.
Few naive plays, like the amount of picks is very disappointing.
It's ridiculous. To throw the last ones after everything that had happened is just crazy. Floating wide balls again.
Yeah.
And especially when they were getting such purchase around the fringes.
Yes, that's true. And guys like Valentini was shown an ability to win.
They were physical. They were physical in the contact to a man. So I think they, with a bit more patience in offense this week.
There were a few heads though. I think guys like Paying Amosa, who were struggling out there.
Yeah, it's true.
And even actually Salakai Loto in his very impressive year that was, and he's increased his physicality, but he was not looking physical enough next to that All Black pack.
the whole bench didn't have the desired impact. Even Tupou coming on, they were managing to get some stuff off of the scrum, but not enough. And CO wasn't scrummaging particularly well either.
No, that's true.
So there are some adjustments to be made, but we should move on and look ahead to the main show this week, which is on Sunday after the delay to it. The Wallabies take on the All Blacks at home for the first time this year. It is Bledisloe 3. Bledisloe, of course, resolved, and congratulations to the All Blacks for winning it.
19th in a row for them.
Yes, indeed. But the Rugby Championship goes on, and this is still a huge game in the context of that. It is. Did you have down there that it's in Suncorp? I'm pretty sure it's not in Suncorp, is it?
Oh, isn't it?
No, I believe it's in Perth.
Okay.
It's in Optus Stadium in Perth.
Okay.
In Western Australia, and the rest of the tournament's being played at Suncorp. No,
right.
So crucially, there is no Suncorp game.
So they have two games in Eden Park back to back, and then they don't even get to play in Suncorp in the reverse fixture.
I know it's
unfortunate.
It's not right, is it? No. It's They have had some success in Perth against the All Blacks before. I believe their record win over them might be in Perth.
Very good. But Perth can create great noise.
Yeah, they're good rugby people. I'm happy to see them have a game, in fact, with the rest of it in Suncorp, but obviously they don't have that particular juju. The referee will be Andrew Brace, so just brace yourselves for that. It could be a whistly kind of game.
There could be some pernickety kind of scrum pens in amongst all that. That's definitely a factor for
It's
them.
Not a Southern Hemisphere ref, which will be interesting.
That's true.
It'll be interesting to see if anything significant comes of that, if one side gets on the wrong side of them. It's just another Rugby Championship game, really, as far as these two teams are concerned. I think you're not wrong in saying that they're a little tired of each other, that the Bledisloe intrigue is gone.
Yeah.
But what I would say is that from an intrigue point of view, that the 57-22 margin is not a true one between the teams, and I think I'm very, very excited to see Australia have a cut off them at home with their home fans in Perth, who will be loud. And I think this is a good team. They're hurt a little bit. Tate McDermott was talking in the week about how it was an embarrassing result the last time. They need to cut out the errors and shape up for this game. I think they'll be hungry. I think if the All Blacks break out the Kamite again, I think as they've done the last couple of weeks, it's like you're not being respected here, Wallabies. They've got to come up and show something, and they definitely have the ability to do it. So from that point of view, it'll be a very intriguing game. Yeah,
they do have that ability. I think their confidence will be a little bit brittle though, given that just given the shellacking.
If things start to go wrong,
then it can snowball much quicker. And then conversely, if things are going wrong for the All Blacks, there's more time and more calm about them to kind of fix that and scrape out a tight one. So there's definitely, I would still, despite the home advantage, which will play a part in it, I don't think we're going to be looking at 57-22 at all, but I would still make All Blacks favourites for it. I'm expecting a good game of footy here to kind of kick us off on the Australian leg of this Rugby Championship. They're getting very used to hosting this competition now over the last couple of years in COVID times, and yeah, we're kind of all just dying to see all these other teams join and mix it together, but they can't kind of overlook this game because of the fact that Bledisloe 3 is now a part of that Rugby Championship.
Sure.
Like
it's
just
gonna
because
be,
Bledisloe's decided doesn't change it.
It's going to be another game of razzle dazzle offense taking each other on. As far as the squads are concerned, we actually are in the unusual position of not having them this year. They're being sort of delayed. It's obviously a Sunday game, so I think they will be out by the time you guys see this video, but we haven't them here at the moment.
Yeah.
There isn't too much in the way of surprises. We have a bit of info about what the squad will be. Ardy Savia is going to captain the All Blacks for the first time this weekend, which is obviously a big one.
Yeah.
And then there's obviously Sam Whitelock, Aaron Smith and Richie Mo'unga, who haven't travelled. They're back in New Zealand, I think, waiting on the births of their children.
Very good.
Perhaps we'll join up with the squad at a later date, but obviously that leaves, I think, TJ Perenara, we're pretty sure, Bowden Barrett coming in at 10 with DMAC at 12.
Yes.
And then
DMAC at 12 or 3rd?
Oh, no, 15. Sorry.
That would be an audacious enough call.
No, Havili at 12, of course.
Yes.
DMAC at 15. And then obviously you've got Patrick Tuipoladu to come in. You also have Tupou Vai if you want to go that way.
Yeah.
You've got Retallick and Scott Barrett could start the game, so they've plenty of options at lock.
They do. They'll fancy their chances of whichever combination they pick from their squad. They'll still think they probably have the edge in the tight five, and they're probably right on that. And just in terms of the caliber of guys, and just looking at some of things like Loto's showing against them, Salakai Loto's showing against them last week, and he's a guy that they do have to lean on. And even Darcy Swain and Matt Phillip were struggling to get purchase against those tight forwards, and you have fresh guys that they can roll in. The likes of Tuipoladu, who hasn't seen game time in this Bledisloe series yet, and he's like, he could come in and do a job. I'm sure he did last year. He was doing a mighty job against them. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, from the All Black point of view, that sort of strength and depth is still massive. They also have George Bridge and Anton Leonard-Brown back available. So obviously they have gone with Reese. They have gone with Reese and Ioane, and they've also gone with Reese and Jordan, with Ioane at 13. They have an Anton Leonard-Brown to throw back in there if they need to. I feel like Havili has boxed off the 12 shirt. I would be surprised to see them go Leonard-Brown and Ioane, although they could.
But listening to different combination for the third game, it's possible. They are still testing things out. They probably want to figure things out before when the Springboks come knocking.
I was listening to John Plumtree talking about the game, and he was saying that wholesale changes are not really what the not in the offing and not what's called for, especially when you consider the Whitelock, Aaron Smith and Mo'unga spine leaving the team.
Already some forced changes.
So I think continuity is probably where they'll go. They have a choice whether they want to go with Leonard-Brown or Ioane at 13. I'd love to see them go Havili, Ioane. And then obviously George Bridge could come on and score a great load of tries, or you could stick with Will Jordan and Sever
probably
Reese,
score at least one try each. There's a lot of talent out there to pick from for if you're an All Black fan. And then for the Wallabies as well, you have some continuity as well that they would probably see from them. It's not going to be a wholly changed team you'd expect.
There's been a bit of news, all kinds of news coming out of the Wallaby camp over the last while. Quade Cooper in the squad.
Yes, that is a rumbling.
He was out doing media on Tuesday, and there was all kinds of speculation. It seems like that's simmered down, and that cooler heads have prevailed, and they're not going to just throw Quaid out there to add his name to the list of guys throwing intercept passes.
Yes,
I think they're wise to stick with Lolosio, which is probably what they will do. Be very surprised to see a guy. Quade Cooper, very, very talented player, but he hasn't played rugby at a high enough level recently enough that you could throw him out there against the All Blacks, the toughest challenge in rugby, perhaps. I just don't think that makes any kind of sense. I think Lolosio will be the guy, and then they obviously have a couple of other decisions to make. I think Vunivalu, the league convert, about whom there is so much hype, is back knocking around the camp, but I think it's a week too soon for him. Likewise, James O'Connor, another week too soon thing. I think he is joining back up with the camp, but it doesn't look like he's going to be in this week. And obviously there's Salakai Loto also awaiting the birth of a child.
There you go.
So many lockdown babies arriving for both teams. He's not going to be around. And Isaac Rodda, who obviously was around, I think 23 times capped lad who's been around the block a bit for the Wallabies. He's going to come in, hopefully in around to make an impact. And then they have decisions to make. They have decisions to make around the midfield, because Karevi, I think, might be an option. He's come back in from Japan.
Very useful asset in the midfield.
Class player at his very best. And then obviously they have that other bunch who they've used to not much profit so far. It hasn't quite clicked for anyone. They could go Paisami, Ikitau, Tuamua, and then obviously Pataya as well in there, and then Karevi as well. So
it's a serious amount of calibre to be bringing to any kind of tournament win the centre just alone. There's a lot of teams, ourselves included, who are envious of that amount of talent.
It is.
And yet you'd still, like, are they still going to end up with Tuamua in there somewhere? Or, like, I don't know.
He's definitely frustrates me. His form isn't terrible,
no.
But he definitely, there's moments where he just flings odd passes. He doesn't quite trust himself on the wide passes, doesn't distribute that well. Can be physical, but not as physical as the likes of Paisami or Karevi, of course. If they can get back him back in there, I would be tempted to throw Karevi back in if he's part of. Well, he's
been very good for them in the past. He does have that kind of stock, although probably not with Dave Rennie. It's probably before his time that he was last capped. But
the other one I want to see is Pataya. He's very talented.
I would really love to see Paisami Pataya again, because I think they were very, very good when they got the run out, and Pataya in 13, Paisami, who's more of a 12 in at 12, makes them a bit more robust, a bit less likely to throw the floated wide passes from inside to out, because you're trusting kind of Pataya's kind of magic trickery to be the distributing force at 13, which is not a bad shout against a converted winger in Rico, although he will be up against speed. But no, I don't know. They haven't quite settled on what their first combination is in the centres, despite having that amazing stock to choose from.
They haven't quite settled full stop, and I think they will. It's just about putting the pieces together. But obviously losing to the All Blacks does sort of make you rethink everything. I know Ireland would be in a more confused position if we had to play the All Blacks 3 times a year, because all of a sudden you're problem solving the whole time. Whereas that is the kind of position that the Wallabies are in. Payanga Amosa struggled at times. James Slipper hasn't had the desired impact at loosehead, but then Seo struggled. Where do you go on the front row? Do you start Tupou from the beginning? Do you haul him off? It's
very frustrating when you keep Tupou off to get your impact, but then you're already 20 plus points behind.
That's what happened the last time. That's what happened the last time. And yet sometimes when he starts a game, he doesn't have that same impact and that same force. Getting those decisions right is obviously massive. And they have, just like in the centres, they have decisions to make around the back row. Lockie Swinton didn't work at all the last time. He didn't have the desired impact on defence in terms of that physicality. And on offence, he was just a bit clunky, a bit dropping balls, just not much of a footballer, and couldn't deal with the frenetic tempo that Tate McDermott was trying to get going. And as a number 6, you got to be able to kind of carry well and hold the ball well and have a passing acumen as well. I think Valentini has to start.
He's been brilliant. Hooper obviously is immovable.
And then you do have Fraser McRaith. You've got Harry Wilson, who struggled obviously in that first game, but you've options.
At either number 8 or 6, because actually I thought I was impressed with Valentini's showing at 8 as well when he was down there. Good skills at the base of the scrum. At one point he had to rescue one that was kind of going backwards, which is a tough enough footballing skill, and he executed it very well. I think him and Hooper are the ones that are immovable in that.
And Naisarani is another, if he's fit, who could come in as well. So they definitely, it's a less settled team, and there's more tinkering. There's kind of guys of a similar level, but the style is really the focus, and from a Wallaby point of view in terms of the squad, they haven't got many settled combinations. They just have to go for it. I think Tate McDermott and Noah Lolosio is the offensive spine, the two guys who are in charge, and McDermott particularly is a guy that they're going to have to lean on in terms of managing things. And Banks is currently their best. Well.
Swain and Phillip is currently their best option in the rows.
With Rodda perhaps to come in off the bench,
maybe. But they will, regardless of what combinations they pick, their pack will still, all of them to a man, have to put in great showings, near flawless showings, to both contain and then ultimately try and beat this All Black pack. Because what we've seen over the last couple of weeks and then the many years before that is just they do struggle to just keep pace with them, and then in the final quarter that's when things kind of break open, and suddenly 2 or 3 errors becomes 2 or 3 tries, becomes 21 points, becomes game over very, very quickly.
And the All Blacks can manage at that tempo and then just pick them off towards the tail end. It's true. As for the wingers are quite settled, Corbetty, Kellaway and Banks. I don't see that changing.
I don't see any reason to change them. I think they've actually been very, very good in the few bits they've had to do. It hasn't been decided out there.
No, but they've all been excellent. They've all taken tries when they've got there. As far as just the meat of the game itself, we're going to take a look at it from the point of view of both teams as we do. We're going to start with the home side, which for once is the Wallabies.
Yes, is the Wallabies, yeah.
And yeah, like obviously we were touching on it there. First and foremost, it's about sort of from an offensive point of view, it's about doing a lot better minding the ball.
Yeah.
They dominate possession and territory to lose the game by more than double scores. I think, what was it, 20, I can't even remember the margin. It was 35 points.
Yeah.
35 points they lost by the last time out, and they dominated the ball. They've got to be smarter. They've got to let Tate McDermott run the show, and they've got to punch holes around the fringes,
which they found some success with. They just weren't patient enough to exploit, because McDermott was good at probing that channel all day.
And he towards the beginning of the game, particularly.
And then you'd have guys like Hooper and even some of the great even Lachie Swinton, when he managed to hold the ball, was finding some seams in and around the ruck, which is fine. If they can kind of build on that and get a bit of momentum, Tate McDermott will get them going forward. They do need tempo, but they certainly need a calm in their decision making that has not been there so far, and I think they should retire the wide pass. I think they should be
but not unless it's absolutely there.
If it's there, obviously, but the by stock pullback and I'm just going to float it out here, and there's not much shape. It can only hit one man,
exactly.
One
it's getting red.
Receiver.
It's like we make a line break, we think that the next thing to do is to flash it cross field, which is a Dave Rennie staple, but the All Blacks are just wise to it, and the quality of the pass isn't good enough, and it's where the frustration with that midfield is coming in, where they just aren't making the right decisions at the moment. But it's about like what's the Wallabies' bread and butter: high tempo, frantic offloads in the tight little inside balls that they so love. That's the big change on offense: minding the pill, being physical in the contact, linking up with one another, and just punch, and then milk penalties, and then from there, that's how you can accrue some points. And the other main area that they have to work on, which goes into the offensive point, is the set piece. Like it's been so kind of up and down and dodgy, and even you guys like James Slipper, who isn't as good as people say he is at scrummaging. He just isn't. He's not as strong as the very best guys in the game. He gets a lot of credit for doing stuff at Super Rugby level, which is a level up in a lot of areas of the game, but not in scrummaging. Like he's trying to attack the All Black scrum, and you can see that you're having this happen in games where he's basically going after them and then slipping and falling and then giving away penalties. Like Tupou is the only guy in that whole front row who can really have a cut at his man one-on-one in the wrestling and win most of the time. For the most part, they need it to be solid, and it's the same at line out. Just let's have it be simple and effective.
Was disastrous at the opening of the last game as well. They lost like 4 on the bounce, didn't they? And it's
they're very good. They're very good at striking off set piece. It's one of the huge staples of Wallaby rugby, and always has been, and a huge part of how Dave Rennie likes to attack as well. They can find seams. They have found seams. That Kellaway try from the first test with the line out dart to Hunter Paisami was brilliant.
Even in the last game, they had a lovely one over the top that ended up 2 offloads, and then it was Tupou charging through on the short line. Very successful strike move. They need more of them.
Matt Phillip is phenomenal at running a maul. Like if they can actually solidify at set piece, they haven't got a Sam Whitelock to deal with this week, which is a huge difference maker, because he is the reader from the All Black point of view. Everyone else is singing to him sheet. So I think from a Wallaby point of view, it's not about doing fancy stuff, apart from sort of from the back's point of view off the back of it, but it's really just about if they can secure the ball from their set piece and have that not be a factor, have the All Blacks not take it away from them, then they can go to work on offense, rather than thinking of the set piece as an area where you have to get on top of the opposition and win penalties. Just if they can secure their own ball off their own set pieces, it will add so much more to their offense. Because of the frenetic tempo and speed to everything, even at the scrum time when they're trying to have a cut and winning some penalties and losing others. It's just taking the set piece strike play out of their game, and I think that's just a huge part of what this Wallaby team can do well and needs to. So I think that's it, honing in on the set piece, and then just on the multi-phase, minding the ball. You can throw offloads, but just be smart and play off each other, but mind the ball. Frustrate the All Blacks, make them give penalties away.
Which they will, and they have done. Even in these 2 Bledisloe tests, we've seen kind of large sequences when the Wallabies have put together some decent phases, which they've been well capable of doing for well over a year. Ever since Dave Rennie's come in, we know they can string a few phases together and play with nice tempo and a bit of width, and ask probing questions with their ball in hand play. And as soon as you do that, this All Black team will probably give away the penalties that will see them kind of get entrances, and if they can, as you say, secure that set piece, be confident in their ability to secure it.
It's so important.
Such that they're not doing goofy... Like, if they lose... What's happened before is that they lose just 2 or 3 to errant darts or good reads, and then suddenly they're doing like little pump fakes and short balls and things, getting free kicks for things like closing the gap, and it's just all becomes a mess very quickly when the confidence is eroded. So even if it means jumping to 2 or something simple to begin with, just get confident that you're going to secure your ball off first phase every time, and then you're going to need to be creative off that strike play, because that is one of the ways of picking apart this All Black team is a well executed strike move,
and then just carrying well, getting Corabetti on the ball wherever on the field he is. You don't have to fling it wide to get him there. You can get him in off his wing.
He will come in off his wing. He always does go looking for work when he's in a Wallaby shirt, which is one of the great qualities of him. You will see him all around the pitch if they can just kind of find him and give him the ball and let him go loose. Same with Michael Hooper. They do have a great work rate to get them going.
Plenty of good carriers, plenty of guys who read the game well and can take offloads off one another, and we've seen them score a good few tries. Just take away the free points that they gave the All Blacks the last time, play a much tighter, more efficient game, and instantly already it's much closer. And that's really the blueprint for them. Obviously the same defensive principles apply. Very difficult to defend the All Blacks on multi-phase, but it isn't where they're scoring the majority of their tries. The Wallabies are doing a decent job of holding their width, not being silly, not being giving away penalties, and just making it difficult. They're not an elite defensive team by any stretch, but they
can mine confidence even from the opening stanza of Bledisloe 1, when the All Blacks, fresh from their kind of Pacific tours or Pacific,
couldn't get outside them.
Were trying wide stuff and was just very well defended by the likes of Paisami in the midfield, just making good reads and good tackles. You can do a lot of that with the All Black multi-phase. Sometimes they stall themselves and they will go to the kicking sometimes, but it's just
the raggedy moments. It's the moments where Wilson in that first test got a little too tight and Maunga stepped him, and the All Blacks were just gone and took a try. And then towards the tail end of that second test, there was a good few of them at it, just missing odd tackles here and there, letting just their mind slip and stop marking a guy.
Down against the All Blacks, that's when the scores just rack up and everything becomes less cohesive.
Obviously they can't have that. If the team could adopt the mindset of their captain a little bit and just keep hustling hard,
well, he is doing a lot of follow me football these days. He's kind of just leading from the front, and you don't need to reward his gung-ho awesome carry by having him look up from the ruck only to see that the ball has been thrown to an All Black winger and he's trotting up the other end of the pitch, and it's like, what? I just gave you go forward, guys. Like they definitely need to tighten up in all areas, literally all areas. Just be less sloppy is essentially the mission statement for this Wallaby team, because I think, as we've touted all year and as evidenced by their series win against France, is like they do have a really good team here. The spine of something really, really special coming in Wallaby rugby. It's unfortunate that you have to face the All Blacks 3 times in a row before you even start your season. It's a very tough thing it's the toughest test of any team to open a season at all, and it does give you kind of a false negative of where you're at, because I think they're a better team than they've shown in this Bledisloe series so far, and I think just the hope is that they kind of do themselves proud by not being as sloppy as they have been in moments, and in front of their home fans, being up to the pitch from minute 1, being there for the physicality, putting in a few big hits but legal clean hits as well, getting the crowd into it early, and then just trying to stay calm in that kind of chaos.
Make it count, make big moments count on the scoreboard. And that's so important. They need to start well, as they did as they didn't in any of their games this year, because French tour was all not starting well.
It was like go 15-0 down and scrap back into it.
They've got to start a little better, and it's on Tate McDermott and Lola Seo, who are so young, 23 and 21, playing this game. Like it's very high tariff stuff for guys with so few caps, a handful between them. But it's on those guys to run a sharper offense and to just play a less frenetic but more effective and still sharp and quick and physical offensive game, just to even out the numbers, and perhaps use the All Black strength against them by, if the All Blacks are just going to kick it to them and defend and then hope to soak and strike, just punishing them by holding the ball the whole time and getting them out of the game and forcing the All Blacks to rethink what they're doing.
Dialing in the 50-22. Which,
well, of course,
is
both everyone will be thinking about
from
that,
both
yeah.
of them. We've yet to see just yet. We've seen some nearly 50-22s in the tournament so far, but I would love to see even Banks from fullback executing. He has a lovely punter, Lolosio. It's a very good way to get yourself
It's a circumstantial one. I don't think it's one they're likely to work in on multi-phase. I just think the cover's there at the moment. You're most likely to see it off the return of a box kick.
Yes.
I'd say it'd be the most likely one. If the All Blacks just box kick it to you and it's too deep and you see a bit of space, that's where you're likely to see it. But I think this is one of the least likely fixtures
it was more likely to be in the Springboks Pumas game, and there was nearly one, but it wasn't given.
That's
but,
right.
It's probably not a game for it. But I would think of all the teams in it, the Wallabies are the ones that should be having a mind to do that, especially if they are securing their line-out ball, which is Plan A. But just punishing the All Blacks for kicking to them and expecting their mistakes to be paying dividends. That was kind of what. They were obviously a less clinical team last year, the All Blacks, but the model of the Argentina victory that was built on defence and stoic defence at that was kind of like the All Blacks were waiting to pounce on errors that just weren't coming.
Yeah.
And their defence was able to deal with their multi-phase, so then they'd be kicking to them and they just ended up in a stalemate of a tight game that the Argentinians were pumped for and ended up edging. It would be nice to see the Wallabies kind of just deny them those scraps that they do love to feed off, because they've had so much purchase off it in the last two tests and over the last few years. If the Wallabies can just be so unrelentingly tidy and stingy with points in terms of turnovers and errors and things like that,
penalties,
all of these free entrances, if you can just tidy that up, we'll see a very different game to the ones we've seen over the last couple of years.
But they're not going to win it until they can improve on, unless they can play a perfect game really, and improve on those top 2 inches before half time, after half time. Like
after half time is the one I have emphasis on. In this particular fixture, the history of the third quarters in the last 5 years has been just brutal. Brutal stuff in terms of like brutality from the All Blacks, and just brutal if you're a Wallaby fan looking at it and go, no, every time, no learnings, just everyone's already gassed as we arrive at the 50-minute mark, apart from Will Jordan. It's brutal. On a happier waters, we can take off our Wallaby cap and put on the All Blacks cap, and it's a rosier picture. Indeed.
I mean, listen, I guess it's a little more complicated than just keep doing what you're doing. It's kind of keep building on what you're building. But it's interesting. It's exciting to see the TJ Bowden axis back for after the Hurricanes stalwarts who played so many games together. We haven't seen them play together in ages, donkey's years.
That's true.
But it's definitely exciting to see those guys at it again. They'll have to be, as they were, they'll have to just frustrate the Wallabies. They have to expect that the Wallabies will come out absolutely firing. They're going to have a home crowd in front of them. They're going to have that extra
big
energy.
Collisions in the early goings, perhaps a big shove from a Tupou, big kind of up against it moments that you're going to face. You're going to be against the 16th man of the crowd, as well as just a very physical challenge from the Wallabies in the first half, but they'll be confident that if they can weather the storm,
it starts with disrupting them. It starts with disrupting and frustrating them, which is, we talked about it from a Wallaby point of view, but the set piece, if the All Blacks have done a great job so far of disrupting the Wallabies and just not allowing them to have clean ball. The pack have been absolutely phenomenal in that area. George Bauer, I think, has been really great.
Great find this year.
They have been physical and game for every moment of it, and then have been lethal on the other end, and that's the key marker for them. If they can just frustrate the Wallabies, not give them that set piece platform, then when the Wallabies have the ball, they've done a great job of soaking up most of what they've had to bring. If they can just do that, obviously tighten up the penalties, and then when they have the ball themselves, it's kind of it's a paid by numbers thing, but they know how to strike. There's so much talent there. They just play a patient game and make hay with the errors when they come, whatever errors they may be.
And they'll hope for a few of the guys who, like who you mentioned, who are coming in for this week. They have the joy that very few teams have, where they just have such a caliber of players that it's tough to get into the team, very, very tough to get into the team, that when you do, you're going to be desperate to deliver and desperate to get on the score sheet in games like this. You'd hope to see that kind of energy from guys who are stepping in to fill the boots of the likes of Whitelock or the likes of Aaron Smith, like the service from halfback. I do love TJ as well, or I like Weber too, who's in the squad, but But Aaron Smith has been just flawless in those first 2 weeks in terms of just clearing rucks at breakneck speed. Like his pass for that Dane Cole's try, or not Dane, no, Cody Taylor try last week or a couple of weeks ago, was just phenomenal off the left hand off the base, just whip it wide across like nearly 20 metres in an instant. That's exactly the service that this All Black model needs to get moving forward. That's why Aaron Smith's been capped as many times as he has, and why a player of the calibre of TJ has been resigned to a 21 shirt for many years. It's up to these guys now to kind of show what they're worth and kind of keep that consistency of clearance of rucks, which I think is just, tempo is the key to this All Black side, and it's the way they love to play, and it all starts with that 9. That's why they have a guy in Aaron Smith who's the best at it, and these guys now in behind have a chance.
They're very good. They're not far from the best at it, but absolutely. I think maintaining the width of pass, the sharpness of pass, and the speed of service to the back line is crucial, along with winning those contacts. And I would say on defence as well, like the one note you'd make, obviously it's been pretty good so far. I don't expect them to throw those wide balls, but if they do, obviously the wingers will still be alive to it. Those sharp ball, if they're just throwing the floated passes, keep attacking them. It's worked in the first 2 games. It's still there.
Bringing line speed against this Wallaby side is a great recipe to get them to throw it like that. Unfortunately, what you've seen with an outside to win blitz is that this Wallaby team tend to just float it out there anyway, and it's hope for the best footy.
It can be quite painful. But from an All Black point of view, obviously they're going to maintain that same system. The only note that you'd give is attack the ball a bit more. Like really do go after the ball, because they make such hay on turnover, and the Wallabies can be a little slow to clear their own ball. So just making a mess of that ball in contact would be the real keynote. I think when you lose guys
like Artie to step up in that area, because he's brilliant at that. Brilliant at emerging from a tackle the other side with the ball and looking for options.
That's where chaos happens from a Wallaby point of view. That's where good situations turn into catastrophic situations, and that's what you want to see. And I think as well, like you talk about the loss when you do lose Aaron Smith, and it's a major loss. He's the best 9 in the world, but you gain something with TJ coming in on the defensive side.
An
of the
extra
ball.
10 kgs.
He floats behind. He's covering the little chip in behind, which is an important job. He has
more jackal steals.
Exactly right. When he's covering that in behind the line, he has an eye for where the contact's going to be and can come in and find that ball. Like if they can just make a real point, especially with the Wallabies, who are going to have to try and attack, and they love to attack, and they're going to be looking for more contacts and less floated passes this week. If they can make shite of the contact area and destroy Wallaby ball legally, do it while you're in the tackle and in the air, and then once it's gone to ground, the tackler let go, roll away, and then the next guy in, come and disrupt it. But if they can really target the contact zone and win that area, make a mess of it, it'll end the Wallabies.
They won't be because it'll take the crowd out of the game as well if they're losing contact and or the ball in contact and that kind of stuff.
Attack that ball.
They still transition is the key for them. It's where they're the best team in the world unequivocally, is that switching from defense to offense in a heartbeat, and just having everyone on the pitch being on the same level once the turnover comes, and all of them running aggressive support lines. You saw it in that Brodie try we were citing from last week, where it was like drop ball from Lackey Swinton. Instantly we're going to flash it right through Rico to his brother. Artie finds a seam, D-Mac gets his hand on the ball, it goes through his hands lovely, and it's Brodie trotting in under the post. Lovely flowy counter-attacking sequence that is just a knife in the heart of a Wallaby, because it was from a Wallaby foray. It's from them getting a little bit of go forward, and then suddenly nope, it's 7 points the other way. That has been kind of the key to the New Zealand long-term success over the last 19 years of Bledisloe supremacy for them. Really, it's been a matter of making waiting for opportunities on turnover and making them count every time, and then just waiting for the Wallabies to kind of fold when you do, because ultimately by the end of the third quarter the Wallabies have nearly given up because of the accuracy of the turnover and transition, and that is still going to be a focus regardless of the rotation of personnel. That is going to be a key focus for them. You see, Foster's been saying it for the last all season. It's just skills and discipline. That's what he's talking about. Skills and discipline. And listen, Bodie Barrett as well back in at 10, where he belongs, with a point to prove, and Mo'unga having put some pressure on, and him not having done so well so far. This is true. His form's been a little patchy since coming back from Japan, but
his calibre is so high, and his ceiling is just beyond everyone else on the pitch. Near enough, he can absolutely sparkle. And I think, was it 5 tries he got against the Wallabies that one time a couple of years back?
Well, that straight line that he runs off set piece, he's done it to Ireland as well, where he just from 10 just carves to the outside of the 9, and the 9 can't cover him because he's too quick. He could run between Paisan, those very young halfbacks on the other side. He could try and test their gas.
He'll test them in all kinds of ways, and I definitely, you would be excited about the offensive potential from an all-back point of view, but conscious enough of the capacity for the Wallabies to frustrate it if you let them have it their own way in the contact area.
Still have to be mindful of Tupou. Whether he be on from the beginning or after 50 odd minutes, you still have to be mindful of him. He's such a world class operator in his field, and it's something you have to be alert to at scrum time.
No question. But listen, with all of that said and done, how do you feel this one's going to go?
I feel that this one's going to be a better game than the last one.
Yes, I agree.
I feel that the Wallabies will show some good hustle. My dream is that they're ahead at halftime.
Yeah, it's possible.
I don't think that they will be. And I think that the All Blacks are going to win by about 20 points. By
20 points. Oof. I'm going to definitely take the under on that.
Okay.
Hopeful, not necessarily. No, your picture is entirely possible. The All Blacks have been very, very impressive this year, where they weren't last year. Their emphasis is so dead on. I've been very impressed with Ian Foster, who's signed on another contract all the way through to the World Cup. That's great news from an All Black point of view. I like just how well it's going for him. I know that there's the Razor diehards who would have him out of there, but I think such has been the impressive nature of what's happened this year. I do agree with them sticking with him. The emphasis of the team is correct. And from that point of view, you would expect them to get the win here ahead of the big games to come against the Springboks. But I would say that if you examine even during the best eras of the All Blacks and go back in history for the last decade, it is hard to find two more important players to that team than Aaron Smith and Sam Whitelock. And actually, if you look at the games that those guys are missing for, those are the games where they struggled. As good as TJ is and Retallick and all of these guys who are going to come in, Whitelock is in particular such a leader in there, and Aaron Smith is unrivaled in his field. So there's definitely scope for the Wallabies to have much more joy at set piece, to have much more joy slowing the All Blacks down, for the All Blacks to have that killer pass removed from the equation that Aaron Smith has. And so I would be optimistic that the Wallabies will put in a much better showing. But I think that when it comes down to it, 1 or 2 hours and 1 or 2 key moments will tell, and I think the All Blacks are just a sharper team than they were 12 months ago. And where 12 months ago, I think a Wallaby performance, the like of which I'm predicting will happen, would have seen them win the game.
I saw them win the game last year in Suncorp.
I think they'll play really, really well. I do. I'm optimistic for them. I think they'll be physical. I think they'll win some contacts, but I think that the All Blacks will match them and come back at it. Pick? No, I don't think so. But hopefully I think the All Blacks will come back at them and find something and just find the win. But I'm honestly predicting a classic. I'll say the All Blacks win it by 5. But I have a good feeling about this one.
That's a much better game than the one I'm predicting, where it's.
I think it might be at the death. Quarter. I think it might be All Blacks at the death, like some of those games that have gone by.
There have been many a Bledisloe heartbreak like that. I would like to see that. What do you think is going to happen? Let us know in the comments down below as well. Certainly you've heard our take on it. It's going to be the final trans-Tasman game of many that we've had this year. I'm sure a lot of those kind of Kiwis and Wallabies are a little weary with it, but rest assured, once this is done, then we're onto the meatier side of the Rugby Championship for the weekends to come, because the Boks and the Pumas will have already arrived and have been quarantined and ready for action now as well. So it's heating up.
Absolutely. But listen, with all that said about the Wallabies and the All Blacks, we're just going to take a little retrospective. We're going to go a little bit back in time over the last couple of weeks, because the last show we were previewing the first our Springboks Pumas game. Since that time, both games have happened. And we were advising the Springboks not to sleep on the Pumas. I believe they did not. I don't think they slept on them, and they also just performed a very efficient physical game, especially in that first weekend. They were excellent in a 32-12 win with all of those changes.
A very popular scoreline in South Africa, I believe.
Indeed,
less so in England. But yes, it was a suitably dominant win. It was apt punishment for Argentina, who, despite their many improvements over the last 18 plus months, maybe even more, their defence is still very, very solid, and they did deny the Springboks for large periods in that opening game. But ultimately they're playing a kind of a diet Springbok model with a less effective kicking game, effective multi-phase.
All of the fears you would have had for them, even watching them beat the All Blacks last year, all of the questions you would have had about their limitations came through. And as is holding true for so many teams in the world right now, they are not a great matchup for the Boks, and so it proved, and they just found themselves a worse version of it. I think you would look from a Springbok point of view, and I think it's probably, there's an indication of just how good the Lions were. People were confused about the level of that series, but in terms of raw physicality, it was as high pitched as Test rugby gets. And I think a great illustration of that would be Jasper Wiese's performance in that first test. He had an absolute field day, and he was running through guys like Kramer and Matera, and he was doing so physically, and it was like you could tell it was just a level less in terms of physicality, and he was able to dominate contacts, which he just wasn't against the Lions. He came in and he really tried his heart out, but struggled to win any contacts, because such was the brilliant physicality of the Lions. It was such a tight physical contest. And the Pumas, who had a pack that beat up the Wallabies and the All Blacks last year, who couldn't lay a glove.
Absolutely beat up the poor young Welsh kids earlier this year as
but
well.
They were levels below what the Lions brought to the Boks, and obviously levels below the Boks, hence given the Boks won out in that series. And guys like Wiese were able to just have a really fun time with it, and Rampage is right. And it was very impressive from him, but obviously just an indication that the Lions tour was real good test for these Springboks.
It was also, what was encouraging from a Springbok point of view is they completely changed their backline. There were some Springbok fans in our preview video commenting about how concerned they were, but it was just, even with Elton in there, with completely wholesale changes in the centre partnership, the result was much the same. It was still built on the forward oriented, kicking for pressure, defensive minded. We had guys like Franz Steyn rolling back the years and looking impeccable from 12, nearly getting that inaugural 50-22 kick himself with his great boot, but it wasn't quite given as one. Unfortunate in that test, but even guys like Elton, who did have a few ropey moments, which he's inclined to, but he had an archer. He got a nice cross kick to Fassi. Did have a lovely cross kick to Fassi, which was well gathered by Fassi. His star continues to rise in that particular. He's pushing some of the guys in the first team, although he's
probably overtaken Sabu Nkosi as the next one in, which is tough on Nkosi as well. He's also
put very few feet wrong.
South African depth, it's a scary thing.
The only thing he did wrong was be in the same specialised position as Colby.
That's right.
Is a tough old ordeal, but he'll still come in and grab a couple of tries. No, they were mighty impressive in that opening test. Guys like Etzebeth, typically huge. Springbok D just managing to just nullify everything that Argentina were trying to do. Argentina's passing was not crisp at all, nowhere near the level it needed to be.
Well, the opening Reinach try was pretty much an example of it. I mean, they're probably in all of that sort of high tempo, frantic machinations that were going on in that set piece move, there was probably a good idea somewhere. There was probably a right pass to give somewhere, but it was all such frantic stuff that it just ended up hitting the turf. And Reinach, boy, has he got some wheels.
Yeah, great take.
Another try for him.
Defensive try again for that Bok team.
And for Reinach personally, I mean, just what a try scorer.
He's certainly a great substitute to have for Faf as well. He's just more great embarrassment of riches at halfback, because even Hendricks, I think, was it, who played?
Hendricks came in and got a try as well.
Got a try in the second
Herschel
test.
Yankees not featuring at the moment, but he's
also
obviously
really good. It's really, really good stocks for the Springboks, and 32-12 in that opening game. Really, really good showing from all. Matera and Bruni were a bit quiet by their standards, I thought, in that opening test. They were
better the following week, but it was Facundo Issa. In fact, for half a game of rugby before he went off injured, he was the only one mixing it, and as so often is the case in those games, he mixes it for a while and then it breaks his body just to cope with them, and then off he goes. And that was a shame. I thought, like, from a Puma's point of view, they were kind of shown up for being a very limited side a little bit, and as much as I don't want to 180 on them for losing to the world champs, because I was bigging them up as a really dangerous rugby team, and I still think they
still are. They
for
demonstrated
Australia
that against Wales. They demonstrated their ability to smother a team and be dominant themselves.
Their defence is great. They've learned from this Springbok team who they're looking at, and obviously they have modelled themselves a little bit on them in the time since the World Cup, but on the ball they're failing to make points count, and we'll touch on this with the other game as well, but they failed to make pressure turn into points. They didn't create much in the whole game, didn't really try, and their handling isn't that slick, and the problem for them is that they're not that physical. They're physical, but they're not that physical. The Springboks are more physical than them, and they didn't really have anything. They tried to kick their way back into it as well. Like, they were down by comfortable amounts. I think it was like 27-9 or something, and they kicked 3 for 27-12, and they did that throughout the two tests. They never went for the 5-yard set, which just is naive in a game that you're being beaten.
Baffling, to be honest.
Tactically they're kind of all over the place. They've got some penalty machines, guys like Marcus Kramer, who
had his worst ever showing in a Puma shirt in that particular game. In that he was everywhere, including that little hilarious moment that was later gift where he like got up from giving a penalty away and went to throw a punch, fresh aired it and knocked himself over, and it was kind of, that was a summary of the man's day really. He's like wild man, angry but not controlled at all, and literally knocking himself and his team over in the doing of it.
The penalties were poor, and they weren't quite at the pitch of that first game as well. No. They went down pretty early. I think they were, about 15-0 or 15-3 down after less than 20 minutes, and the game was kind of done at that point. It was a question, it's like, wait, I think you were saying at the time watching, it's like, oh, they're 15, will they even score 15? And they didn't. They scored 12. It didn't
look likely because of that. Like you're saying, they never went for the 5-yard set. They're still willful and insistent that they're only going to score in threes, which they did last year as well. We were questioning it sometimes in that game, in those games against both the All Blacks and the Wallabies. They were insistent on kicking threes, and sometimes it didn't count for them. It did count for them in that historic win. They were able to defend them such that their few scores were sufficient. But rarely is it going to be enough against a team of this caliber, or like the world champions. You're not like you scored 12 in that opening game. They scored 10 in the game the week after. Like it's never enough. 22 points in 2 games against the world champs. Like, it's rare enough that 22 points is going to be enough to beat them in one game. And that's a big issue for them. They've got to score more points.
Truly, exactly. And I think we'll touch on that now, the second game, which also happened 29-10 to the Springboks.
Yes.
Still very imperious stuff from them. They brought back in some of their first team players.
They did. Likes of Am and Pollard came in, but the story was much the same. The Argentinians did arrive more at the pitch in that game. I think it was 15-3 at half-time, that one, as opposed to 15-3 at like 10 minutes in.
No, it was much better, Juju. I think it was their home fixture, and actually they had the full version of their anthem, which they hadn't the week before. And I really think they should insist on it as well. I don't understand why sides who are hosting the game get away with cutting out the whole intro. You can see it takes the buzz away from them, and I just don't think it's right. It's not like it's that long. Just play the whole anthem. But they got to insist on it for their home fixture, even though it was away in Port Elizabeth. They actually did their little dancing routine as they were coming onto the pitch again, with all the lads jumping up and down. They had some of their squad players in the crowd making some noise and bringing energy. And I was thinking, like, watching it, like, oh yeah, they're ready here. These Pumas team, they are definitely, more so than last week, up for a fight, and they need to be, because they've got, a really good Springbok team with Mostert and the like back in the mix, and Pollard, of course, and Lindy and Am. And so it started that way. The Springboks actually got the first bit of ball, and then the Pumas were so game off the line defending. First thing of consequence that happened is Pablo Matera got a really excellent extendy body steal, which was just excellent. Matera was so much better this week. Last week he was at the pitch 100%. And they managed to steal some ball. They managed to get down the field. They had some good purchase down the field. They did, and then they couldn't really create anything, and they couldn't make any of that sort of pressure.
Their 3-pointer that came in that first half came from actually just a sloppy error from Visa on the restart. He went to deck and again crawled and got pinned for it, which they've been high on that for the whole season long. You're not going to get away with crawling. So it was a free 3 points that they kicked, and they kicked it when they were, I think, 12-0 down to make it 12-3.
It was 9. I think it was to make it 9-3.
So
maybe
it was
slightly more justifiable.
But what wasn't justifiable in my mind, and it was again the sensation looking at, was like the first half was ended. Like, the Boks didn't break them down. The Boks themselves, with some of their poor habits, because they were probably starting to edge and dominate the game enough that a try probably should have come, and actually Marvin Orey had a drop there where he was clean through. That was one of the 3-pointers they accrued that did feel 5 or 7 on the floor in that instance. But for all of that dominance, the Boks didn't quite manage to make it reflect. They had only 15 points, and the Argentinians got a chance to go at them at the end of the half. It was 15-3. They received a box kick on the halfway line, and then he didn't even go through a phase. They just kicked it out. And it's like, what are you doing? How are you ever winning this game? You've scored 3 in the first half, and you're going to end it it now like that. It's like, are you even going to score the 15 required to get up to level this? And again, the answer was no.
Yeah, and they have these errors that they were found out in a few areas. They were just very poor with the ball. Couldn't create much. Tough to create against this defense, but didn't look to create enough. Didn't attack with sharpness or speed or any of the things that you would have associated with Argentinian rugby just a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
That was all missing, and then they had that defensive energy, but that sort of angry energy that they had brought just manifested itself as penalties for large parts of that first half.
Petty's line-out discipline was horrendous. But then collectively their whole composure went to pot when they started. Like it just snowballed. It's tough. It's a chicken and egg trying to, who's to blame, but what the end result was just that it was whistle. It was just going to kick, penalty, exit for the box, then a bit of a play, and then another penalty, entrance for the box, and then a score. You come from that, the kick off, they get a free exit from a penalty. It was constant, bewildering display.
21 penalties in the game, so more than one every 4 minutes. Insane return. Yellow cards. Bruni went off after the ref got tired of them, and they were all penalties. Like it was a variety of different penalties.
Yeah, there was offside penalties. There were hands in the ruck penalties. There was playing the man in the air
not
penalties.
Not running away. All kinds of stuff, and the Boks were just a much more composed team. The try from a Bok point of view, like they had something of an armchair ride. Used their physicality very well in the first half. Created much. Will be a little frustrated that they didn't get tries in that first half, and I think they were talking to that end, but they were so comfortable in the game, a game that could have been a dangerous one for them, I think they would have been pretty pleased with it.
The only minor frustration is they didn't manage a bonus point ultimately, and that's probably on account of the first half. They didn't get the try that they should have had, and then the 2 tries that they got in the second would have been sufficient.
And they did have some time on the clock, but the game just kind of pittered out, and it just didn't happen for them. It didn't, they had 1 or 2 chances but couldn't get it. But the 2 tries that they did score were very, very good.
They were.
I thought really impressed with Willie LaRue's contribution in particular for the first
one. It was excellent, because it was him pulling strings on the right hand side, putting Dale Linde into a bit of space first, and then he notices it's on the other side and just goes straight into sprint mode and folds right the way around.
The camera angle shows it, because he just comes from behind where the ruck would have been. He just comes into the foreground, zipping across, and then the wide shot shows it as he just runs all the way around the whole Springbok backline to create the extra man, and throws another lovely pass. It wasn't his best one, but it was still very, very nice. It was
backwards and it was into Mapimpi's arms.
His passing game is excellent, and he's not throwing them forward, as you rightly point out. Like in all of those tight situations, he's getting them off backwards, which some of the guys don't. His technique with his passing game is really good.
Even if the spin is a little wonky, which that one was, it's still going backwards, which is the key thing, and it finds its way to Mapimpi, and he just grabs tries for him, and he does. And then the other try, I think that was at 46 minutes, so that was enough to pretty much ice the game just after half time. And then their next try came shortly after that, and it was kind of right and proper. It was a Malcolm Marks maul try, but it was just really well executed, because that maul had tortured. It was where the majority of those petty penalties came from. It's just the fact that Mostert and Marks between them were just so dialed, and they couldn't get near them, and the only times they tried, they were just conceding a penalty. And it was so nice that they went down the corner, did exactly what Argentina
Pollard's
didn't dare.
Kick was something else as well. It's from about the halfway line all the way to the 5.
Into the corner. Marks throw it to the very tail of the line out to Mostert unopposed. Very swift transfer down to Marks, who's already at the base of the line, or the base of the maul that's formed already. Straight pivot and straight over, just textbook maul try, which is it's objectively a boring try to some people, but that one was very, very well executed, and it was kind of nice, because it was apt in the game, in the context of the game, that they were the team to go for it. Obviously they were hunting bonus points at that point, but it was exactly what the Argentinians should have been doing much earlier on, trying to go to that kind of set.
And they've had it with Montoya in the past, but they just don't trust it enough, and they trust that they'll be able to kick their way back into games they're miles behind in, which is definitely a problem for them.
True against the Boks. The Boks were actually comfortable playing that, certainly in the first test more so. They were scrubbing out a few of the Argentinian 3-pointers that were taken, just because they were going okay, well, if you want to play this slow, laboured, tit-for-tat game, that's fine. We have a 20-point head start. We'll just keep doing that.
Exactly, and for every penalty, the Boks were giving away, the Pumas were giving away too. So it was comfortable enough for them. Still very impressed with the bulk of their squad. They're humming away very nicely. And credit to the Boks as they move on into the second stanza of their Rugby Championship, and still the scorecard looking pretty imperious from a Springbok point of view thus far.
So. Actually,
credit to Matera for getting a try against them.
That's true. because they are in very short supply these days. I actually have a stat to illustrate that, or a little table that I found. This is tries conceded in the last 10 matches from top level international teams, and you'll see down at the bottom here, for illustration's sake, you have 59 conceded by Italy. That's the unfortunate case of being the whipping boys in 6 nations. Yeah, that's not a great stat. Up here you have Japan, 27 in the last 10 games. Not terrible, but it's still up there, pretty high. Wallabies, 26, probably not helped by having to play the box and the All Blacks as often as they do. The All Blacks more so than the box even. Argentina with 23, Wales 22, England 20, Ireland and France both with 19, Scotland with 17, the All Blacks with 15, and the Springboks, world champions, have conceded 4 tries in their last 10 games.
That's just so insane. Less than one every 2 games at the moment.
Which is why Matera, fair play, it was in the 86th minute that he grabbed that try.
Yeah, and he did deserve it, because he hustled hard all day, and they did have their moments on defence, the Pumas. Actually, Lavanini was funny, because his was his card came at the end and just added to his stat, because he'd actually had quite a good game. He got a couple of charge downs off on Reinach. He wasn't playing too badly at all. But just at the end, he showed his true colours and gave away yet another yellow card
for
to add to his collection. Just ridiculous penalty to give away. There was no justifying it at all really.
I was angry. Yeah, he was playing well. That's the justification. Actually, Pollard played impeccably well as well.
He did.
His bombs were on the money, as you were saying. His touch finder for that Marks try was so dialed. What an unbelievable kick, and 100% from the tee.
I'll give a shout out to Mornay Stain from that first game as well. He had a lovely pass for Hendricks' try, clearing that ruck after they made that initial break. Van Staden just sat down Sanchez, but presented the ball, and Mornay cleared the ruck really quickly and fed Hendricks. It was dialed offensive Mornay in and around the ruck. So it was all positive for the Springboks. The Pumas have work to do at the moment. To be honest, I kind of find them a very frustrating team. As good as I know they are on defense, I just think they're a little undisciplined. They're
sometimes
they're a bit dirty, and then they get annoyed and angry, and they aren't channeling their very infectious passion in the right way at the moment.
Yes,
and their offense is a little clunky, and so it's just,
and especially when you look at the caliber they have out wide, their distribution is nowhere near good enough, and like Sanchez didn't start in that.
Their shape isn't
game.
anywhere either. They're just not. They're not playing to set up these wide attacks. They're not really trying to take teams on in that way. And when they have the All Blacks and the Wallabies to play, they got to do that. They got to bring this offensive game that I know they have instinctually, because we see so many different teams. Argentina 15
always plays rugby.
It's in their blood. They do want to attack. They want to play fast-paced footballing.
Have yet to really see what Cheika's influence on this team has been yet.
Which is a little concerning.
It is concerning, because he was laid out to the camp, I know, in the context of this, and they have obviously built themselves on defence and on set piece. The first Ledesma thing was to steady the ship at scrum time, and he has done that. And then defence, and they have done that, and there's still great tools to build from, and there's still a top quality outfit, and it is just unfortunate that I think both stylistically and in terms of calibre they just match up.
It is the best defence perhaps we've ever seen they were matched up against, as is demonstrated there by that stat. So hopefully against the Wallabies and the All Blacks they'll have some more competitive games. But as it is, I think there's not much more to do but just say to fair play to the Springboks. They've seen off the Pumas. They had their 5-week run of tests, all 5 from 5 in that 5 weeks. Delighted for them. And now
they did lose one.
Oh, sorry, excuse me. Sorry, yes, that's right. Of course, the first one, 4 from 4 in the last 4 weeks. But no, they did have that first week blemish, of course.
Yes,
giving them too much credit there. But they've been a sensational year so far for them on their return to rugby. It couldn't have gone much better. But obviously, those greater tests await in the Rugby Championship in the weeks to come.
As we say, we're just licking our lips for that 100th test between the All Blacks and the Box now. It couldn't be more box office if it tried now. With you have world champion Box and you have the ever-present All Blacks and the illustrious All Blacks. It's just going to be a mighty game later on in the year.
Absolutely. There's 2 games we'll be looking ahead to next week. Sunday games, New Zealand will be taking on the Pumas, and the Springboks will be taking on Australia, all in Queensland. That is going to be very fun next week. But I think for the time being, we're going to park the Rugby Championship and move on to other matters.
Indeed.
And we're back. Not that it was to our knowledge, but sorry about that. We're going to do an in-podcast apology because we missed some of the footage there from the last little bit of
Camera on Fritz.
Yeah, I think, I don't know if we missed about 40 minutes or something like that, but the camera wasn't recording. We now know that. We believe it now is recording, and here we are.
Yeah.
So hello to you all. Again, as we were just looking back at that game, I think the audio is still good, so hopefully you got something out of it. But yes, our apologies for that loss of footage. We are back, and we do have another juicy game to look ahead to, this time in Tier 2.
Absolutely, yes. We have Canada versus the USA Eagles. It is a Rugby World Cup qualifier for 2023. It is the first of a two-legged affair. There's going to be a second leg next week in the States.
In Denver?
In Denver, indeed, in Colorado. But for this week, at least, we're in Swyler's Rugby Park in St. John's, Newfoundland.
Yes,
Saturday
famous ground.
Very famous ground, very small, intimate but loud ground. It's a very tough place to go and travel, so hopefully we'll have the 16th man there for the Canadians. It's going to be Saturday 4th of September, kickoff. That's 3 o'clock Canadian time.
So about 8 o'clock in Ireland and UK time, 9 o'clock South Africa time, and God knows when in Australia and New Zealand.
You can
and
figure
the
it out yourself if you're over in Tasmaniaville like that. But in the meantime, we have the referee is one Mike Adamson, who I know indeed. You're not a huge fan of. It's the Scottish ref. But beside him, we have an all-Canadian kind of officiating team of two assistants, Mo Chaudhry and Robin Kaluzniak, with TMO Chris Asmus of Canada in there as well. So 3 Canadians in there to help out Scott.
To tip the scales. It was actually, it's next week's team is Mike Adamson and 3 Americans.
Yeah,
or 3 USA guys. So yeah, that's a funny old dynamic. But this series, obviously, just to recap on where things stand as far as World Cup qualifications. The series winner of this 2-match series, which will be done by aggregate score, the winner will be Rugby America's North number 1.
Yes.
Rugby
or RAN 1.
Yeah, that's a bit of a mouthful. But that winner faces off against Uruguay, who've confirmed themselves as South America number 1.
Or SAR 1.
SAR 1, yes indeed. And those two will play off then for the World Cup.
For America's 1.
America's 1 into the World Cup. Yeah. And so the loser of that game between the winner of these two and Uruguay will go into a separate playoff to be America's 2, which will feature them and the loser of this game, who will play off against Chile. Yeah. And the winner of that fixture will then go and play the loser of the America's 1 fixture. So conceivably, let's just say you have the US win this game, face off against Uruguay, lose to Uruguay, Canada face off against Chile, beat Chile, then you have this game again to be America's 2, and then the loser of that game goes back and takes part in the repechage.
Yes.
So one of those 4 of Chile, Canada, USA and Uruguay will not be in the World Cup at all. They won't even go into the repechage.
Yeah.
1 will go into the repechage and 2 will qualify.
Yes.
And this is part of that series to decide it. It's the first part of North America's piece in it. South America's already resolved itself.
We were following a bit of South America's machinations as Uruguay were being quite impressive in getting themselves to that RAN number 1 spot. Whereas now, we have the North American clash, an old rivalry as Canada hosts the US Eagles. Just in terms of history, the two have actually faced each other 62 times overall.
It's a chunky amount for 2 Tier 2 teams, but they are neighbours.
They are neighbours. They do play annually, generally in normal times, even for quite a while. The edge goes to Canada historically. They have won 38 to the USA's 22, and there have only been 2 draws, one of which was a dismal sounding 3-all draw from 1982 in New York. That as I was reading up, I was like, my God, that must be a contender for one of the worst games of all time.
Yeah, how do you know? Could have been a great old defensive battle.
Could have been a defensive masterclass from both, but I don't know if I believe it. Their first match between them was played in 1977 at Swangard Stadium in British Columbia, and Canada won that game 17-8, and then the USA won their very next game next year, the year after, 12-7, I believe. So it's been pretty tit for tat, but Canada have edged it historically. However, the more relevant record is the recent record, and in the last 6 years the USA have really been dominant here. They've won as many fixtures in a 6-year period as they did in the previous, I think, 27 years.
37
years even, going back as far as that opening game. So yeah, they've been more dominant. As we've kind of alluded to, Canada have maybe dropped off on the levels they've been at before.
Sure. Well, I was going to say, in terms of the benchmark for Canada, and as far as this is obviously the first step on their journey towards France 2023, wherever that journey ends, whether it ends in the competition or before then. But I mean, they have a very high stock as far as Rugby World Cups. They've competed in every single tournament since the inaugural one in 1987. They've never not made it. They, in fact, their peak was reaching the knockout stages, the quarterfinals in 1991.
It's as far as we've ever made it.
Yeah, indeed. Canada, same achievement level as Ireland at the World Cups. They made it to a quarter-final.
Yeah.
It was a 29-13 defeat to the All Blacks.
It's not
entirely
not
creditable.
It's a better defeat than our most recent quarter-final defeat to the All Blacks.
No, indeed. Yeah. So I mean, their stocks are pretty decent as far as historical pedigree is concerned. Yeah. But obviously, they just haven't. They are at the moment in some form of free fall, and will go into this series as firm underdogs
for sure.
As far as this week's game is concerned, though, I mean, St. John's does have this special a special place in Canadian hearts. It has a tough reputation as a tough place to go. That much is going to be interesting. The Canadians obviously have 12 Toronto Arrows in their squad.
Yeah.
Those guys have been off in the States all year playing MLR rugby. They haven't been able to play a game in Canada. So Canadian rugby fans, they've been starved of these kind of games, of any kind of games. Yeah. And so I'd say they'll be well hungry, they'll be loud. I'd say there'll be a lot of pride in terms of Canada. They'll know, this is a one-off. This is their chance to have a cut at the Americans at home. If they're going to win the series, they're going to need to win this game.
Yeah.
It gets very tough for them to qualify for the World Cup if they start losing games like these.
Truly.
So I mean, I think they'll be highly, highly motivated, and hopefully at the right pitch to have a cut at this game, and that is the Canadian hope.
And that is it, and winning this game is vital to their chances of getting further in the series. Obviously, you should say for both teams, as you were illustrating with the format, should they win this two-legged affair and go to face Uruguay, they're already guaranteed of at least the repechage.
That's right.
So it's really good, worthwhile, not just for the Americas one spot, but just in terms of securing your ability to go for it. Getting one foot in the door is very key for these teams, and it's the stuff you build on. You were alluding to 12 Toronto Arrows in the Canadian squad. Obviously, a massive contingent of MLR representatives in the US squad as well. It's very much off the back of a very successful MLR season in their third ever season, with a lot of attacking rugby displayed from many new clubs, many new contenders emerging this year, and many new players. You'd love to see some of that talent and some of that verve bleed into the national sides of both Canada and the US, if not this year immediately and this series, which I think, like the small hopes, you should see a bit of it in this series, but over the next 3, 5, 10 years, you're hoping to see massive growth through that.
Yeah, 100%. As far as the squads themselves are concerned, it is a game in which we have the actual squads, which is good to see.
Yeah.
The Eagles, just starting with them, curiously they've had... Sorry to take a sip in the middle of a point, but my throat was getting a little dry. They've had sips for suspense.
Yeah.
What have they had, Daragh? No, they've gone with a slightly different team than the one you would expect. They've gone with 3 hookers in the squad, which is weird. Taufete'e appears to be covering prop on the bench. Big Joe Taufete'e, which is a bit weird.
Is that speaking very highly of his scrummaging capabilities, or just dismissive of the Canadian scrummaging capabilities?
It's weird either way. The man is a hooker and has been a fulcrum part in their sort of maul axis. So, I mean, to move him out of there seems a very curious one. They've done another couple of quirky things. They've got Will McGee in covering 10, or starting 10. I mean, they have plenty of options to choose from. Luke Carty was the incumbent. They've moved him to fullback for the dual distributor idea. They've got Bracky, who was playing fullback in that summer series, back in at centre where he belongs. They've also got no Mikey Teo, obviously, with Luke Carty at 15. Mikey Teo, the MLR Player of the Year, not involved. They've Baska, the scrummy.
Yeah, I'm disappointed to see that now. De Haas retains his 9 jersey despite being a fundamental problem for them over the summer.
So they got Opsberger covering on the bench.
Don't know him.
He's played a bit, like he was once in the Sevens program. I know that much, and I think he's been around. I think he plays for one of the teams, San Diego maybe.
Okay. So you're telling me he's not a 19-year-old
No, he's been around for many years, so he's not a young lad. Right. And that has been a point of stall for them, is that they haven't been able to generate much tempo from 9
or accuracy of pass. That's been such a problem. Like the service has been poor, and Baskin is one contribution that I can remember was grabbing a try against us in the summer. So I don't know.
Indeed. So it's a somewhat experimental side. They have got Cruz on one wing, as they did have have during the summer series. He's very lethal. They've brought in Christian Dyer.
Still have guys like Cam Dolan in the pack, which is probably where this is going to be decided, whatever, about their hijinks out wide.
100%. They have got Christian Dyer has come in from the US Sevens team, and he's playing on the wing. Good to see some quick fellas out there as well. And as you alluded to, they have a big forward pack. They still have the likes of Gurmashees, the likes of Cam Dolan, though that's their money players, and Dylan Fawcett getting the start at hooker is no bad thing. He's a fine player as well. So that is definitely going to be where they're going to look to win the game. The line out mauls, the scrums, clear from that point of view that's their point of emphasis. But yes, Ed McGinty, the captain of the side, and obviously one of their stars, relegated to the bench, which is curious as well, given the fact that they have 2 10s on the starting team and a third on the bench. It's very distribution heavy, but might have something to do with the 50-22. Who knows?
We could see a bit of that impacted from both, especially with their pedigree from 5 out and their penchant for mauling and attacking from that set piece. Yeah, you could see them try and implement
something
that.
They should be doing anyway.
If they're tactically on the ball. As far as Canada are concerned as well, it's a similar enough side to what we expect, a similar enough side to what we saw over the summer as well. You still have Broad and Nelson at their halfback combination. You have some speed, guys like Lloyd and Webster out wide can grab tries. They need to be the more attacking side, so it's kind of nice to see a bit of speed, but it's really the tight that they have struggled to live with any of their opposition over the last number of years. It's been really 5+ years since I can remember them mixing it in the tight.
No, indeed, there's been nuggets of positivity in offense, but it is the same sort of stalwart heads in the pack as it has been. The likes of Connor Keys who can mix it at times, Andrew Quatrin at hooker coming in. There's some points of optimism.
He aptly named Lucas Rumble at 6. He needs to bring a bit of that rumble, because he's going to be facing Cam Dolan.
They are missing Tyler Argent, who is such a quality player, is busy playing club footy, I believe, in France at the moment, somewhere anyway, which is keeping him from playing in this pivotal game, which is a little unfortunate. From their point of view, they're missing a couple of other French-based players as well, so they're a little less than full strength, which obviously hurts them too. But they do have some quality in there. I'm excited to see Spencer Jones from the Arrows coming in to make a debut at 12. He had missed much of this season through injury, but he's an exciting prospect. Hopefully he can come in and attack.
If he can help some of the distributing kind of things, if he can take some of that responsibility off poor Nelson, who they've been making do pretty much all of it, and he's a fine footballer. I'm very happy for Nelson finding a home for himself over there and doing a solid job for this team as best he can, but very often he's like the sole playmaker out there when they run out of ideas, and he's not good enough to get away with that.
No, indeed. So I mean, it's a hope that these boys sort of rise above themselves and just find a quick
when you want to see with the
game.
Crowd going with them, you want to see a bit of bite and a bit of grit out in Newfoundland. You want to see them kind of welcome the US to the trenches and try and be there physically from the very off. And then you could see an old classic of a humdinger of a scrap if Canada arrived to the pitch.
That's right. They need to be, as far as just their method for winning this game, Canada, looking at them as the home side, they do need to be the side that's more clinical. I would say more than anything, they need to be quicker than America, and they need to be more clinical, and we've seen nuggets of that. A bit like at a tier 2 level, kind of like a bit like Wales. When Wales were at sea for the whole year of 2020, they were so awful, and yet like in moments when they blitzed England after the second half with that one try, Canada clearly they run decent support lines when they break a line. They can all pass, they're pretty quick. They can take a try, and they
can take a try in a single phase, which
arguably the most important team, because when you come across a tier 2 team that really can't take a try, it is a painful thing, and they're not that. As much as they've had so many issues, just floundering on defense, floundering at times on offense,
some of their scrums,
all of their physicality, a lot. Sometimes their attitude, their shape, everything can go pear-shaped. They have been one of the more terrible teams to watch in recent times. The fact that they have that ability to grab a try means that if they can hone themselves and put themselves together for one big show, they do have the potential to knock a sluggish America.
They've also shown a stoicism over the summer that I remember I cited as well. Like, it was in the same week as USA were facing Ireland, and that went very badly for USA. Canada were facing England in Twickenham,
Yeah.
and they willfully, insistently kicked to the corner every time in the first half, even though they were outmatched and they were never going to win the game, and they managed to get they were repelled like 3 or 4 times, but they did get 2 good first half tries and got 14 points on the board in Twickenham. Very, very impressive for a team of the calibre of Canada up against a team like England. They have no dreams of winning that game in Twickenham, and yet they were rewarded for their gung-ho kind of willfulness to go to the corner and try to go for scores. Yeah, they ended up scoring 14, and the USA, by contrast, did kick an early 3 against Ireland, but ultimately got in for a late consolation to make it 10. And it's like, as much as we were looking at it thinking the USA are probably a better team, and we're saying they're coming into this contest certainly as favourites, and their own showing in Twickenham the previous week where they
was much more encouraging.
More encouraging, but it's just that kind of attitude from Canada is what you want to see. A kind of let's go for it, we're at home, we're going to take charge of this, let's try and punish this US team and try and make them be the sloppy ones.
Make them be the ones who are a little sluggish and a little slower to score than we are, and get on top of them that way. They have to attack with speed, they have to make the Americans uncomfortable, they have to test that US midfield, which is all sort of jinked about again with Bracky back in at 13. They need to go after them. They need to start linking up and go wide and really get on. Trust change the game for the
Trust
Americans.
your guy at 12 and Nelson to get them wide. Guys like Webster and Coates and guys in the back 3 really need to be picking aggressive lines if they're going to try and have any purchase. It's going to come from
the Toronto Arrows, who have 12 players in this squad, are a team that mould themselves on speed and width. And while they can be soft at times, they can also pull off great wins
lethal,
by just finding tries and moving the ball wide, and that is very much the Canadian model. They will also need, obviously, to disrupt the Americans a little bit of line-out time. It remains to be seen if they can do that. The likes of Connor Keys and Corey Thomas, who they have in the locks this time, who I think has played back row for them before, but getting up into the line-out and disrupting and stealing ball, that's the kind of stuff that they're going to have to do.
It's not a mismatch here. It's not a tier 1, tier 2 scenario.
No.
This is for all the marbles in terms of World Cup qualification. Yeah, they should be confident of their ability to mix it, but they also need to be recognise the fact that it is such a huge weapon for the Americans, that set piece, and try to disrupt it. You're at home, you've got to try and make it not clean. You certainly can't be an accommodating opponent at home.
No, and they've been all too accommodating in many of their matches in recent times. So yes, offense, be sharp, move the ball well, disrupt things at set piece, and then on defense, where they've been so poor recently, they just need to make it tougher. The US at the moment, they do not have a great multi-phase offense.
No, they don't.
They're not doing much off it. They're struggling a little bit if they're repelled. De Haas can be got at.
Passing is not
they can be caught
accurate.
Slow. They probably won't get outside you if you defend competently. If you get out of the line, make your tackles.
Falling off of tackles is an endemic problem in this Canadian side more recently, and also just discipline on that defensive side, just like either jumping offside or like riding up high, which they've done a few times as well, like really sloppy technical errors.
Sharp technical tackling should be enough to shut down the US and then turn it into a game where you're more clinical than they are.
That's the mould for Canada, all right. It's there's definitely a chance of it. It needs a fair few things to go right for them, but obviously the main one is don't put your head down when things don't go right, because both teams are going to have their moments. What would be disappointing, because there has been a brittleness to Canada of late, just in general. Like if the US, despite all of this tactical talk, if they do manage to capitalise on a penalty, go down the corner, score a 5-metre try, take a lead, you don't want to snowball that by losing the head and losing the composure, which has been a tendency in patches. Like there have been 10-minute patches of play where they've just been wogus on defence, on discipline, on everything. It's gone. Everything's game's up in smoke, and then they'll finally the dust will settle when they're completely dead, and then maybe they'll find a nice try at that point. But like that can't be the way this story goes. They need to have a bit more grit in their home ground, and I think maybe the St. John's factor will give them just that. I would hope to see a little steeliness from this Canadian team, enough to make this a very good game. Yeah, I agree. I definitely have some points of optimism for them. From the USA's point of view, obviously they had a tough end to the summer tour, getting pumped by Ireland. Yes, but overall they will be confident. You know, they were a poor matchup for Ireland. They were how they like to play the game, especially with their week. Like the one they will mine confidence most from is the final quarter in Twickenham. Like when have you ever seen a tier 2 side put at that kind of second half display against a tier 1 side? It just doesn't happen. No, indeed. Normally they're getting blitzkrieg by that point. If they're in it at all, it's normally the first 20 minutes, not the last. So that was very impressive impressive from a fitness, from a will, from a coaching point of view.
They shouldn't have issues with fitness. They've played this whole season.
They can also rationalise that Ireland defeat as like, we got stuff off from 5 out in Twickenham the week before we went to Dublin, and like you have guys like Paul O'Connell coaching Ireland, like they just licked their lips at a team deciding to turn down threes and kick the corner. It doesn't matter if it's USA or the Springboks, they'll still be like,
take it as an insult.
Oh, you're going to do that? We're going to try and defend very, very gamely. So like, they just tactically matched up badly in that instance because it was just, going into the Lions' den with the plan to, try and out-lion them.
I guess. That's 100% true. I think they won't panic as a result of that.
No.
But they have made some interesting adjustments. I'm definitely excited to see the Carty-McGee axis in flow.
Yeah.
Are they going to try and be a little more expansive with their play? That's a question.
But
I think Dahas needs to shape up. They
have more
and
speed on the wings than they have done in years gone by. That's an encouraging sign. Just more speed in the backline in general. More kicking acumen, as you were highlighting. Perhaps 50-22s are a great.
Yeah, they're such a set piece team. Like that's working in a 50-22 off multi-phase with those two distributors, if they have the techers to pull it off, which I know Luke Carty does have in him.
He does, yeah.
If he can find him in a bit of space, a bit deep behind the line, and the Canadians aren't coming up in his face, and he has time to place the ball, that could absolutely be in for them.
We're putting together loads of good attacking kicks in the course of their season, including many from his boots. So there's scope for them to kind of marshal this very well if they do calmly kind of deal with what assert some dominance physically. It'll be guys like Cam Dolan in the tight, if they can just rampage through a few contacts and then give front football to those kind of distributing forces out wide, then you have options to play with. What we were talking about in the macro is you'd love to see this US side kind of build on what they have, which is a physicality that, unlike most tier 2 teams, it's a physicality that can mix it at times with tier 1 levels of physicality. But it's not the be all end all. Like, they're not physical enough to outmatch them there. No. They need to be able to take more tries than they are. They need to be a slightly quicker team than certainly the team that arrived at the Rugby World Cup in Japan, which was just physical enough and had some set piece chops, but was just way too slow and not clinical enough. And that was what you were saying.
Less clinical perhaps even than the Georgians these days. Like they aren't moving the ball as well as them, and that's definitely an area they need to work on. Dahas needs to sharpen up. The passes need to be better. It needs to clear rucks better, and they need to be able to generate some kind of tempo and offense. Because as we were saying with Canada, there is a chance for them to have their pants pulled down if they can do all kinds of industrious positivity for a 6-point lead. And then end up 7-6 down, and then maybe end up 12-6 down, and then kick your way back to 12-9, and all of a sudden you're up against it as the last quarter arrives and you haven't scored a try. Now they do have the weapon. If they can exert themselves physically and get penalties, and they turn down the threes and go to the corner and use their 5-meter drive, that's one avenue for winning. But definitely, I do think this is a game where it's win at all costs kind of job. This is about the World Cup qualification. But if they could work in some expanse and some added elements to their game,
it's a necessary recipe, not just for like the 20-year picture of them becoming much better and a more relevant force, but also for the more real picture of like, it's more likely that they win this game more comfortably if they can move the ball quickly.
100%.
And then beyond that, they're going to face Uruguay if they do win this, and it's that's, you need to be competent with ball in hand if you're going to take those guys on, because right now I think Uruguay are slight favourites regardless of who comes out of this contest, and I think USA are favourites I think to come out of this contest after the 2 legs are in the dust settled. But on the macro, the US will need to move that ball a little bit better, and that's why it's encouraging to see this experiment of having 2 10s on the pitch, 1 at 15. It feels like and having a guy in from the 7 circuit to come in on the wing as well. Like it feels like they're noticing the lack
they got good tape on attacking rugby from the MLR.
Exactly. If the MLR is going to bleed in, like you were saying, the Toronto Arrows' influence in Canada, like the MLR has shown this season what attacking rugby and verve and tempo can do to a structured kind of slow labouring team. And those are good lessons for the USA to learn. It's only the 3rd season of the MLR, but these are good lessons to kind of drive into these guys, and hopefully see
exactly. And they probably have a bit more quality than Canada in terms of just digging it out. Like you'd expect guys like Cam Dolan to just get on top of their opposite numbers, win
like,
contacts.
Even if Taufete'e does come on at hooker, like there's more impact on their bench too. Adge McGinty coming on.
Ainu, who's from Toulouse,
awesome.
Very decent stocks to be able to bring in as well. So they have a bit more on the bench. They have a bit more in the starting team. And for that reason I would make them comfortable favourites. I would predict, as far as predictions are concerned, I'd predict a US win, but I'd say it'll be tight enough in this one. I'd say they'll probably win again in Denver next week. I'd say this week I would say a 1-score win for the US. That's comfortable enough that they do see at home, like a 22-16 kind of job.
Right. I'll take the slide over. I'll say like 8 to 10 points.
Okay.
You're just a 2-score going against.
You're just so down on Canada.
I have no faith in Canada at the moment. I'm hoping I'm being proven wrong, and I was so delighted to give them some credit for grabbing those 2 tries in Twickenham, even though it was
nuggets of positivity.
But I was really down on them in the World Cup because they were really annoying me.
They were,
and they haven't really kicked on since then. So
no, it's definitely
still vexed by them. I'm worried for them in the long term because you were at the top of this segment we were talking about their illustrious history, and they have dominated this rivalry historically. But at the moment, I think it's the Eagles who are on the up more so than Canada. Canada are on the petering out.
They're on course for this to be their first World Cup, not in it. Yeah,
that is where they're on course. They need to be watching out for Chile.
Yeah, in fact, they could be not in it before the repechage. That's true. 100%. But yes, that's that game. If you have any thoughts or opinions on what might happen, be sure to let us know down below in the comments. But we're going to move on and look at club footy.
Absolutely, we're going to start in South Africa because the Currie Cup is actually reaching its denouement itself. This weekend we have semi-finals happening.
This weekend, today, my friend. Actually, Saturday as you're watching.
Friday as it's out. On the first of the semi-finals is between the Blue Bulls and the Western Province. That's Friday 3rd of September today. 6 o'clock kickoff. So we have the Blue Bulls, the ever-present Blue Bulls, and the Western Province, or Stormers in other parlance. Those two are ever-present. That is a bit of an El Clasico in Currie Cup speak, and it's going to be a big titanic tussle. Shorn of the Springboks, who are obviously, it's been a Springbok-free Currie Cup. But,
yes, as they have been in many pre-COVID years recently. Haven't been taking in too much of it, but even just looking at these teams, it's easy to see why the Bulls are strong favourites and a very tough team to beat at the moment.
They've isn't it?
Johan Hussen at 10, I'll say, is one of the better 10s about versus Tim Swiel from Western Province. But a couple of names would stand out: Marcel Coetzee and Arnel Botha at flanker. Both two guys who both plied their trade in Ireland over the course of recent years.
Munster and Ulster,
but here the two of them are packing down in the flank for the Bulls. They'll be looking to impose themselves physically on this game. They just have a bigger pack player for player, although Ntubini and Johan du Toit will hope to do things from a Western Province point of view. They have Lionel Mapu, interestingly, at centre. Lionel Mapu and Juan de Jong lining up against each other at 13 is a real blast from the Springbok past.
Yes, that's true.
And Cornel Hendricks back on the wing for the Bulls. Sergio Peterson from the Western Province point of view is a name that definitely stands out. I'm just looking through the teams here as we go. But the Bulls will be favourites, but Western Province, certainly, if they can mix it defensively and hopefully drop whatever this juju is that is causing the Bulls to make every opposition they face melt this year, kind of wears off. Apart from Benetton, of course,
Maybe they can just KBA and run ragged around them, although I doubt it.
They should take some lessons from Benetton. They should keep the ball in field, change the game a little bit. They have some quality in terms of their outside backs. They could make it an awkward game for the Bulls if they do something like that.
Very often when the Western Province pull it off, it is by being a little bit awkward and a little bit bitty and then striking clinically, and ideally that'll be what they're about. It is going to be away for them. It is the Bulls who are top seeds going into this, so they are slight favourites in semi-final 1, but I think that's going to be a good game. In semi-final 2, that's on Saturday, and we have the Natal Sharks, who would also be hot contenders pretty much every year, and they are facing the Griquas, who have arrived in the post-season. Fair play to them. They have been very impressive. Obviously they kind of struggle to compete with these big Super Rugby sides, and now URC tries a lot of the time, but they've edged out the Lions this time around in terms of that spot, and the Cheetahs, all the cats bowing down to the Griquas. They will be travelling to face the Natal Sharks on Saturday 4th of September. That's going to kick off at 4 o'clock. And I'm optimistic for them, but I think ultimately the Sharks will probably show too much.
Your money's on another Bulls Sharks final again this time. Boutelese has been great from a Sharks point of view all season. He's in at number 8. It's a familiar enough sight from the Sharks point of view. Lionel Kronya and Nohamba is a halfback partnership with some optimism. Marius Lowe and Werner Koch in the centres have been very good in moments this year. And Kerwin Bosch at 15 is an interesting dynamic from the Sharks as well. I'd be confident of a Sharks win, more confident in fact than the Bulls against the Western Province, because the Western Province actually are a bit game and could perhaps pull off a shock.
Proper contenders. The Griquas I think have done very well to make it as far as they have.
I would think so.
And I expect playing out in Natal that they will probably struggle to deal with the Sharks, just in terms of their defensive acumen and their pressure game, but also just the raw physicality player for player will probably tell by the end, as it has done against the Griquas. Have kind of have strung some lovely sequences together in the bits of rugby
they're a
I've
nice
seen
team
from
to
them.
watch.
They are quite a lovely
moments,
flowy team at moments, but also on the macro they seem to just be a little slighter than some of those big mean top end SAFA teams.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. But yes, that is the Currie Cup Semi-Finals, as that wraps up in advance of the URC, which obviously is kicking off towards the end of that month.
Some intrigue for us with regard to that. But also, we're going to pivot back to Europe now, and we're going to reintroduce this graphic from last season. But we have one bit of interest. The Top 14 is the first of the European leagues to return. French rugby for 2021-2022 is going to kick back off this weekend with 7 games over the course of the weekend. We have 5 on Saturday and 2 on Saturday. Just going to rattle through them.
2 on Sunday.
2 on Sunday, I should say. And none on Friday, basically, is the revelatory thing there. But Biarritz Bordeaux on Saturday. That's opening the events at 1:00 in the afternoon.
Good to see Biarritz back in the comp.
Excellent.
Come on, the boys.
I've always been a big fan of their colour scheme and their jersey, and just some of those great teams.
Their history, Yashvili and Taranordiki and all of these class. Even in Gwenya, that was such a fun Biarritz team. I've missed them.
Skinning a load of boys in a Biarritz jersey. So they will face Bordeaux at 1:00 on Saturday. And Cast will host Po at 3:05, and at the same time Brive will take on Perpignan at 3:05 as well. Also nice to see Perpignan back in there as well. Another blast from the past. Then at 5:05, Stade Francais will take on Racing 92 in quite a meaty fixture, and then the biggest of the fixtures at 8:05 that evening we have Toulon versus Montpellier in a very expensive game there.
And then we have on Sunday Lyon against Clermont, which is obviously a good game as well. Lyon always famously tough to beat at home, and Clermont obviously world-class attackers.
Well, certainly at this point of the season, Clermont look the best team in the world.
They always make for fun games as well. They just run the ball around, and it tends to be a high scoring occasion no matter what. And then we have a repeat of the Top 14 and Heineken Cup finals on Sunday, which is not one to miss if you are interested. La Rochelle are taking on Toulouse. It's in La Rochelle.
Freshly 5-starred Toulouse. Ready to go into the next campaign.
That's a juicy fixture for Rogers, Charges and everyone else. I mean, this is one of those leagues, if you do have the means of watching it, it is a great one to watch. I mean, sometimes the games can be a little frustrating, but what they do have is plenty of class players, huge stocks, some of the great players of the world play in this league
as well, some of the great
and I was going to say some of the great fans, and there's a real sense of a rugby occasion in the grounds and in the Top 14. The fans really do add to the
brass band going, all kinds of noise, and
I'm not sure what level of restrictions they have in France at the moment, but I think they'll have some fans in anyway, and I dare say they'll have decent atmospheres going as well. But the Top 14 as always is a great watch, and there's plenty of world class players. If you're South African, there's loads of Safas in there.
That's true. Every club has at least 3 Safas bolstering their squad.
There's fun dynamics all over, and plenty of class French talent to watch as well on the Top 14. So I'm very excited to have it back. It's nice to have the European season kicking off, and that starts on Saturday. The Top 14 is back again, which is great to see.
One of the big Safa news bits though is that we have Cheslin Colby will not be donning the Toulouse jersey this season. He has flipped over to Toulon, which is good news for Rog, because wasn't he saying that he's sick of having to coach teams who are playing against Colby, and in this instance he's facing Toulouse again, but there won't be a Colby this time. So
there wasn't going to be anyway. He might have been thinking this is a good one to have out of the way because Colby will be off in South Africa, but now he might have to face him twice in a Toulon shirt. So maybe it's not good for Rog.
Maybe not. Well, he'll just be relieved to face Toulouse and not have to do the whole Colby segment of the breakdown. But it'll be exciting to see Colby in a Toulon shirt, obviously, as well. Slightly disappointing if you're a Toulouse faithful, I'm sure, but he has already cemented his legacy there.
You reap what you sow. I mean, all of these French teams are playing high bidder games. I mean, Toulouse can pretend all they want to be more dignified than that. They were delighted to have Colby. It's a bad loss for them, but Toulon, they play the money game. If they're playing the money game, then you can't complain when you lose it. It doesn't just become a disgrace when Toulon do it, as much as they have been the worst offenders over time. But Colby taking a big paycheck to go over to Toulon and join his countryman Etzebeth,
and putting together a dangerous meaty old Galacticos team again from the Toulon point of view. It'd be curious to see how they look on opening weekend. But similarly, it'll just be kind of exciting, as you say, to have French rugby back. It is back earlier than all the rest in terms of European rugby, but it is always just a great tournament. And yeah, excited because there are just many good teams, and in the last couple of years, attacking rugby has kind of been coming to the fore. You've seen sides like La Rochelle, like Toulouse getting up to the top, even Clermont finishing third or so in the regular season, and you've seen slower juggernauts like Montpellier kind of drifting down the table rather than up. So it's been the trend in terms of a rugby point of view. From our purist point of view, it's been prettier positive one, more higher ball in play time, more intense games, some top quality internationals, the likes of Will Skelton, who you won't see in a Wallaby jersey, but you will in a La Rochelle one. And you get to this time of year is perhaps the best time to watch it as well. They sometimes tighten up towards the tail end, but actually in the early season, top tours games can be very fun, and I'm going to be excited. We haven't had much rugby just to casually watch on the weekends. We've been a little starved of it, to be honest. So it'll be great to have these in. Football instead. All kinds of things that we've had to fill our eyeballs with in the absence of rugby. But also the women's game is returning in a domestic sense. We've actually had interpros over in Ireland going on at the moment, which is great to see from that point of view. They're televised for the first time. And there's the Premier 15s, which is coming back now this weekend. We obviously covered it a little bit as it was on last year. Probably the best, it's the first major professional game, a professional league for the women's game. Loads of talent flocking in from all over to it. It's actually becoming a very, very exciting competition. It's building nice momentum. All of the matches, I think, some of them are being televised over in the UK, depending on where you are, but I think they'll all be available to watch on stream anyway at premier15s.com. That's 15S for 15s if you're interested in watching it. Just good games in terms of like the women's game. It's as high a standards as it gets, and the standards rising if you're interested at all. Actually, it's the English Domestic League and England between their national side and this Premier 15s are doing massive work for women's game in general in Europe and the world over. I think it speaks to their credit, and the growth in this particular league is just based on the investment they put into it, and it's really is starting to pay dividends. I know a lot of the Irish girls are now contracted over in some of these clubs as well, and it's great to see a professional tournament like this for the women's game that has a few degrees of separation from the men's game. It's not like the Women's Six Nations going hand in hand and ultimately kind of falling underneath it or being buried by the men's game. It's nice to just see it stand on its own 2 feet, because it's a great product to watch, and some of these games are brilliant, to be honest. We have as far as the games themselves, you've obviously 10 teams in the league, 5 games going on this weekend. Bristol face Exeter in what would be a good game for the men's and the women's. That's at noon on Saturday. Then Sale take on Worcester at 1:30. Then Wasps Saracens at 3. Gloucester Hartpury v DMP Durham Sharks. That's also on Saturday as well, and then a game on Sunday between Harlequins and the Loughborough Lightning, which is in the Stoop as well. So that'll look like at any given moment over the weekend, if you're fancy just taking it in just to see if you're free at all, I would recommend just hopping on to premier15s.com if you have the means and taking a gander, seeing if you might enjoy it, because the women's game is definitely on the rise. 100%. So exciting to see that return. But with all that being said, we're going to move on to our last segment, which is the rugby news of the week. Absolutely. And there is a few. It's kind of the rugby news of the weeks. This week, because we've obviously we haven't been recording shows for the last couple of weeks, I guess. So we do have a bit of housekeeping to do in this segment, but we'll do our best to rattle through. We'll start with obviously just a few things around fixtures. There's a few fixture announcements that have come out. And we're going to start with the 2021 Women's Rugby World Cup, just to stay on women's rugby. There is the European qualifiers are taking place pretty quickly. They're coming on the 13th, 19th and 25th of September. So basically it's Italy who'll be hosting this competition. They're going to be competing against Ireland, our own charges, Scotland and Spain, who won the Rugby Europe Women's Championship in 2020. It's going to be a round-robin format between those 4 teams, and then the top team will secure a spot in Pool B at the Rugby World Cup, which is obviously being played next year.
and the runner-up will enter into their own little repechage tournament for final qualification as well. So huge games set to take place between Ireland, Scotland, Italy, and Spain, which is, and Spain, by the way, very good at women's level.
Yeah,
so yeah,
they're like the equivalent of Georgia in the men's, where it's the constant gripe is like, why is the Six Nations set in stone? Why can't we get this top quality team in?
Yeah, 100%. Spain perhaps even have a better case in the women's game than Georgia do in the men's. They're an awesome team. So those games are kicking off on the 13th of September. They start with Scotland, Italy, and Spain v Ireland, which is obviously a huge game for ourselves, Ireland as well.
Yeah,
Ireland, in the context of
by
World
no
Cup
means
qualification.
guaranteed qualification at all. In fact, I'm not sure if the omens are good necessarily from our own point of view. But
final tidbit on the women's game as well is that the Colombian women made history in the past week in Nairobi. Now this is real in the weeds stuff for those who are uninitiated to the game of rugby, but I was just seeing a clip on Twitter. It meant so much to them. They managed to, they're called Las Tucanes, and they defeated Kenya 16-15 in sudden death in the Women's Rugby World Cup qualifier. And that result means that they're basically going to join. They're going to be in the repechage for the first time ever, and are a step away from qualifying from the Women's World Cup. And it was beautiful scenes to see them with their big away win in Africa. The Colombian women's team, Colombian rugby on the rise as well. As with all rugby in South America, it's coming force.
It is. It very much is a sleeping giant, and it's exciting to see that. Sticking with South America, I guess Chile will face Argentina 15 in September. This is the men's game, I believe, again. But it's going to be a Chile's kind of test side taking on an Argentina 15, which is very often the way these South American development games do go down. The match will be uncapped, but it is of vital importance to Los Condores. Condores, I should say.
Los Condores.
They're seeking to make history against the runner-up of Canada versus USA. So this is kind of serving as a warm-up for them. Kind of a, keep yourself warm, I guess. Ring rust, knock her off her while though the two-legged affair that we were previewing is going on. So
exactly. The Chileans are working away. They're going to play that game against the Argentina 15 and get themselves ready for the big game against the USA or Canada to keep themselves in the World Cup hunt, which they are still firmly in. To park international footy in the other news context as well, we also have the United Rugby Championship schedule released. They described it as the most complex schedule ever, basically to avoid. It's great stuff, isn't it? We all love that. So there's 144 games as the South Africa top clubs are basically taken to the field again here with the Celtic nations, obviously, and the Italian teams as well. Global first for rugby, they describe it as a multiple country tournament, ever expanding international league that we're in. But it's great. I'm delighted. I'm already buzzing. The first weekend of games is going to be so juicy. It's I think the weekend of September 27th. But there's some really juicy games in there. Leinster are going to host the Bulls on opening weekend. We hope to be there.
We do hope to be there.
God, that will be brilliant stuff. Looking forward to seeing that. The champs against champs, and the Bull, there'll definitely be bragging rights at stake there. Equally, Munster are going to welcome the Sharks to Thomond Park. Another great game. So all of these games are going to get very juicy early on in the season. Obviously, these SAFA teams minus their Springboks, and chances are many of these Irish teams minus plenty of their internationals as well. But they'll still be great club footy games, and we're definitely buzzing to see that. So good to see the schedule announced, and just whetting the appetite at the return at the inaugural URC to come. The inaugural is exactly it, and it's just I'm just grateful to be excited for some of these fixtures in our very own Celtic League, our domestic league, our Pro 14 as it was. Our games that we go to every week, and it's just so good to be able to go to these games for once from our own selfish point of view. That's
a selfish point, but also just excited for some of these fixtures. Like very often it's Leinster v Dragons on day one, and I'm just like, okay, I don't really care.
Easing into the season.
In, whereas, Leinster Bulls, day one, it's going to be the Aviva Stadium from a Leinster point of view because of social distancing, so it's going to be a grand old occasion out there. I'm excited for this brand new look to the competition, for quality sides coming in the shape of those SAFA sides, and a serious kind of gauntlet laying down to teams like Scarlets, teams like Glasgow, Edinburgh, pick yourselves up, get up on a level, because like you will be made look silly by those SAFA teams if you don't arrive at the pitch.
100%.
So I'm excited.
No, totally. It's just going to be brilliant from it. There's also been news around Super Rugby, positive news really.
Yeah.
So next season's Super Rugby format has been sort of green-lighted and finished, and obviously the main news is that the 2 new franchises, Moana Pacifica and Fiji and Drua, are confirmed. They're
along with all the trans-Tasman clubs.
Yes.
So 5 Kiwi teams.
5
is it 5 Kiwis?
5 Kiwis, 5 Oz, Moana Pacifica, and Fiji and Drua.
Yeah.
And so basically what they've decided to do is abandon the Super Rugby AU and the Super Rugby Aotearoa, which is a bittersweet kind of moment.
Bittersweet.
Really.
Probably bad. Well, yeah, it is bittersweet. It's like the Super Rugby AU was doing great things, I think, for the Aussie
Super Rugby Aotearoa was just stellar viewing.
Watch, I'm sure. I'm sure the Kiwis might have been thinking it was a little bit too much, but from an outside looking in, it was just
the
beautiful.
The Kiwis were the ones lobbying heavily for the return to this format. Yeah. On the plus side, as has not been true, it's back to it now that the SAFA sides have jumped ship. Yeah. We have gone back all the way back from our Super Rugby, all kinds of conferences and all kinds of stuff, all the way back to a Super 12, old school style. Obviously, shame to see the Jaguares just not part of the Super Rugby plans anymore.
Yeah, I don't know.
They seem to have jumped ship with South Africa somehow.
Yeah, I don't know where they end up. The Jaguares, do they end up in the MLR? Do they end up in their South America? Is it just they have a SLAR?
Yeah, they had a team in SLAR. The Jaguares, that branding was being used for the SLAR team. But anyway, so they're sort of in limbo at the moment. But obviously I just think in the main it'll be good to have that sort of simple round robin format back, just to add sort of to the ease, less confusion to proceedings than usual. And obviously the 2 new teams are going to share a £1.2 million funding package, an annual funding package from World Rugby.
Excellent.
Which is big to see as well. So good to see World Rugby just going out and supporting them in that way. Obviously it's just nice influx of money, nice bit of faith in Islander rugby.
Absolutely.
The venue for Fiji and Drua's home games, I'm hoping for it to be Suva, obviously pandemic depending.
That, but I think it might be Australia somewhere.
Well, we don't know what the situation is at the moment. That's all up in the air, but we do know that Moana Pacifica are going to be kind of New Zealand based, right? Which is. I kind of feel like it would be nice to have them hosted in the island somewhere.
I would like that.
I would.
It does Fiji and travel.
Yeah, I know, but let's have Fiji and Drua play out of Suva and just tour.
Yeah, I would be in favour of it, but I think logistics are playing a part in all of this as well. It's nice, as you say, to just have something a bit more firm. It's going to be, I think, Super Rugby Pacific is the branding to Super Rugby Pacific 2022 as opposed to AU or Aotearoa. So the two new sides to inject a bit of something. It'll be extra intrigue. There'll be new dynamics. I think hopefully we'll have seen those improvements from the Australian side still carry through. You want to still see the Kiwis will be the standard bearers going in, and then the ones holding the torch, and none more so than the mighty Crusaders. Although the Blues are trans-Tasman champions, but it's the Crusaders and Scott Robertson that everyone has to worry about.
Truly. What I would say as well is that interestingly they're going with an 8-team playoff, right, which apparently has been done to appease the Aussie concerns of just the lopsided table. They want to keep some intrigue in there so that the Aussie teams are as involved. But I mean, a 12-team round robin competition followed by a quarter final with 8 of the 12 teams in it. Kind of
like some of those some of those Olympic events that have group stages that go on forever and ever, and you still don't have a final 4 or 30.
So lots of rugby without too much consequence in the regular season part, which is one criticism you'd have. I really feel like they should have at least gone for a barrage 6-team playoffs.
I agree. Mind you, I think the URC has done the same. The United Rugby Championship, haven't they?
But there's more teams in this.
There are, I know, but I think they're still probably wrong. I think the barrage format is what you should be leaning on. I think it's really, really good, and I think it gives fair reward to the teams that finish first and second.
Regular season success, absolutely. No, I would totally concur with that. But as it is, that's what they've gone with. And in the main, I think it's positive, but obviously it remains to be seen whether Super Rugby, AU or Aotearoa do return. There's also the Rugby Europe Super Cup competition, which kind of disappeared off the radar after its announcement early in the summer. Rugby Europe have come out and unveiled the calendar for that, and that's going to start this month, so it's straight away into it. Obviously there's 8 teams. As a reminder, there's the Eastern and Western Conference, and that's starting with an all-Russian derby between Onasai STM hosting Lokomotiv Penza, And they're also going to see the Portuguese outfit, the Lusitanos, entertain Castilla y Leon.
That's right.
The Spanish side. In a sort of an all Iberian tussle out there between Portugal and Spain. That's always going to be a fun derby. Yeah. And the Dutch team Delta are welcoming the Brussels Devils as well. So Belgium against the Netherlands also taking place on opening weekend. I think there's an Israeli team as well, but I think for restriction reasons their opening weekend game was cancelled.
Right.
Whereas will have to be rescheduled.
Right.
But 3 games in that competition taking place this month, and that is a professional competition quietly working away in the background.
Yeah,
hopefully it'll get good enough to earn itself at least a winner place in the Challenge Cup.
That would be nice.
It can enter into the foray of European rugby.
That would be an ideal thing for it. That's it going well. But I think all 27 matches of the competition are being filmed. That much they've guaranteed and will be broadcast. Somewhere.
Hopefully just online. Just get it going.
I would like to see a stream, not dissimilar to what other things are doing. Like what Rugby
Europe are pretty good at doing that. Just pop it up on the website.
This is it. But the only assurances are that it will be recorded, so they will be out somewhere, but we will have to try and find them. We'll kind of keep abreast of that as it goes on, but it is just nice to get an update on that, and we are definitely rooting for that to kind of take legs and go, like we were with SLAR as well in South America. The first thing, if they can just get a season played, that's it in the books forever. Then it's an historic competition. You can go back to it. The first season is the toughest,
100%,
especially with COVID going on. So good luck to all organising that and all the teams involved. In other news, slightly older news, we have Rugby Australia are set to scrap the Giddo law. They haven't yet done it, despite the pressure that was coming in the few weeks.
They've brought Karevi back, haven't they?
They have. Yeah, that's true actually. Yeah, so it's kind of.
It's on the way out.
It's on the way out. And Giddo, I think, voiced his support for scrapping it. Then other guys came in advising against scrapping it. I think on balance, it's probably not doing them any good ultimately.
Yeah, they're swimming against the tide somewhat. I mean, Ireland have a stricter law.
Yeah.
They don't let anyone in unless they're Johnny Sexton, but obviously that's only when push comes to shove and they absolutely need someone.
They might make a similar rule if it were Tadhg Furlong, but unless you're that kind of player, you're not getting in, and for Australia that would be Will Skelton is the one glaring at you who's like, I
agree,
straight
absolutely.
In there and improves us from struggling to dominating,
100%.
In that area.
Skelton is one you definitely look at to get in more than any other, and one would think they will look at him in advance of the World Cup at some point.
Surely he's going to the World Cup.
But it is a shame to see their honourable intentions swimming against the tide working against them, and there is a very real potential downside of a talent drain from
just
Aussie rugby.
all the guys leaving. Yeah, well, it was in the wake of Corabetti signing with the Japanese side. Was it? Who did he sign with?
Someone in Japan,
I can't remember who it was, but that was kind of what sparked the conversation, I guess, is like, well, we can't not pick Corabetti, which has been true. It is kind of there's a nobility to the law, and there's certainly a good thought behind it when it was brought in. But ultimately, what they want to see is just a more competitive Australia team than what they're seeing at the moment, and part of that will just involve getting their players back in. So you see, South Africa obviously have a far greater playing pool, but they don't have any similar law, and they happily bring players back from Europe to go into Springbok duty straight away. It's possible to do that.
That's the model that they do. They have such depth of that they can retain some strength in their domestic game
than it is Australia.
100%. In fact, they probably couldn't sustain all of the teams that they have the talent to field. They couldn't put together the league of 13 or 14 quality sides, which if they kept all their players domestic, they could do. But from in another story that just to change pace a little bit, we want to shout out and give our best wishes to Tongan head coach and also Wallabies great, of course, Tutai Kefu, who was out of hospital and doing well apparently after he was stabbed in the chest while defending his family during a home invasion, and his family also were attacked.
So
the neighbours managed to come
wife
in
all got defensive wounds from it, like a bunch of teenagers armed with like a machete and a knife and something else, and it was like
just coming at him anyway. So he put his body between himself and his family and managed to anyway just save them and thankfully survived the incident as well, and they got the people out, but fair play to him and our best wishes to him in his recovery. Thankfully he does seem to be okay, which is great news.
Delighted to hear that, because initially we were going to do a show a few weeks back and that news had just broken. It was such a bummer to hear. It was terrible news.
Well, along with the ongoing situation with Levan Maisashvili, who the news coming out of that is very, very sparse at the moment, so our best wishes always with him as well as the weeks go on. him struggling with COVID. But good to hear that Kefs is out of hospital and doing well, and a great story from him for saving his family. He'll have that forever now. If he can recover, he can.
He is literally
dine out on that forever.
That's true. And fair play to his neighbours for coming in and interrupting. I think that was in Brisbane, which is where he resides. But scary enough stuff. Home invasion, never good.
No.
But we will move on from that. We have Richard Cockrell. This is kind of an under the radar one. It hasn't been announced yet, but Eddie Jones is set to make a few changes to his coaching ticket. I think a few people are moving on, but Richard Cockrell is one who's been touted to be unveiled in the next couple of weeks as their contact coach and line-out coach, apparently.
It's not a bad place for him. I think he's probably a better specialist than a head coach.
Probably.
He's very good.
He's good at giving grit and good set piece kind of like fundamentals to
every team he goes to gets good at the set piece specifically, and so that'll certainly be, if he can target his good juju into that area again in the context of a smaller job, it could be a good appointment for sure. I would be curious to see, obviously we'll see in the weeks to come what Eddie Jones does with his coaching ticket. I'd be very surprised if they got rid of John Mitchell.
John Mitchell's been brilliant for him. That would be a coup for someone else to steal.
He's one of the better defensive coaches in the world. I wouldn't mind Ireland picking him up if he does go missing, but that'll be a curious one to watch. There was also good news out of Portugal, or out of France really, but involving Portugal, is that Rafael Storti, one of the best talents perhaps in all of Tier 2 rugby, a Portuguese winger, has been signed by Stade Francais, and so yet another Tier 2 guy going to enter into the mix of top level club footy.
Yeah,
brilliant. I'm looking forward to seeing Storti in that beautiful Stade jersey.
In the Rugby Europe, he has been scoring tries for fun out there on the wing for Portugal, which is a very good place to be in.
I think club size should be looking at this Portuguese team and mining talent.
Yeah, I'd be tempted. Whoever has got Marques, someone needs a halfback, get that guy in.
100%. They have some real quality in the back line that you could be looking at as a guy who you could bring in and strengthen your club. And I think more and more of that is happening as we go on. There's also just the news as well. It's not really news, but it's just a rumour now that's becoming more and more true, which is basically the expansion of the Rugby World Cup. So the latest drip we got was that the Chilean head coach, Pablo Lemoine, basically said on his stream that he's been told that the World Cup will definitely expand by 2031, and possibly even by 2027. So they're going to move it, I think, from 20 teams to 24 teams.
Yeah, and follow the Football World Cup towards massive expansion, which is only sustained because they're all good teams in the Football World Cup.
Well, you do get some mismatches in the football as well. You're a skeptic for
I'm
this.
I'm a skeptic of this. I think we haven't yet mission accomplished in this form of the Rugby World Cup. I think we got closest last time around, as we'd highlighted on this podcast, that amazing group with Uruguay in it, where every team got a win. And that was the first time that had happened in a Rugby World Cup, that every team in a pool won a game. In a pool. That has only happened once, and it was the last one. So as much as I like the idea long term of expanding the Rugby World Cup, I like the idea of a 24 team tournament. I think it might be a little further down the line that it's sustainable, because you want competition and an intrigue. You don't want the mismatches. You don't want the New Zealand Namibia games that we've been treated to.
You're just going to create that we retired the 145 point showings perhaps to the past, and this might bring them back up. That's probably a decent case for against. The case for would be
more chances for your Chileans.
Exactly. There's a huge financial boost to getting into a World Cup, and if you offer that to more teams, there's a chance that you can accelerate the growth in these countries a little quicker. But it possibly comes at the expense of some really ugly games in World Cups to come, which we've gone some ways to rectify.
Springboks versus Colombia.
Yeah.
Do I want to see it?
No. I definitely hear you on that. I definitely understand from a fan's point of view, which is where we come at it from at the end of the day.
Ultimately,
it's not exactly ideal.
I think it's ultimately the goal, but I don't know that we're there to the point of guaranteeing.
No, we're not there with 20 yet. Really, we're getting there.
Getting there with 20 is where we're at as a result of that group that had that great Uruguay game that was unprecedented and was a watershed moment. You need to see more and more groups like that in the World Cups to come, and then eventually, ideally through macro growth of the game across things, through the Southern Hemisphere or the South American game growing, through the North American game growing, through the Central European game growing, through all of these things working in tandem, then you have an ecosystem and an amount of teams at the international level that you can sustain a 24-hour team or a 24-team World Cup. I don't think we're there just yet, although I like the optimism.
Yeah, absolutely. And the last bit of news, just to box off everything, is just that Rassie Erasmus's trial hasn't, or trial, is that the word for trial? His whatever hearing. Yeah, trial. Where am I? Yeah. He's on trial. He's going to put World Rugby on trial. But anyway, that hasn't begun yet. But they are accepting submissions at the moment.
Yes.
And actually, it's kept Rassie from travelling with the Springboks down to
possible negative juju for them. They're going to be without their spirit animal and their water boy.
Yes, indeed.
We're very
They're
practical.
Going to be thirsty
they
boys.
Might be thirsty for some Rassie out there.
Yeah, absolutely. He might rejoin them, but at the moment he's having to deal with this ongoing hearing issue, and so they've gone without him, which is definitely a point of interest. You, I think, wanted to sign off with his tweet.
Oh yeah, his tweet. Well, like he's submitting evidence right now, and we haven't had the trial yet, but you can still have trial by media, where you can tweet hilarious things and get likes from things like the Overlap Rugby podcast. But a few weeks in advance of his disciplinary hearing, he was tweeting an old fable that was "Don't argue with the donkey," which was quite just immediately that is like, don't argue with the donkey, So like the donkey. What did he tweet? He said like, the donkey said to the tiger, "The grass is blue." The tiger replied, "No, the grass is green." The discussion heated up, and the two decided to submit him to arbitration. And for this, they went to the lion, the king of the jungle. Already before reaching the forest clearing where the lion was sitting on his throne, the donkey began to shout, "His Highness, is it true that the grass is blue?" And the lion said, "True, the grass is blue." The donkey hurraed and continued, "The tiger disagrees with me and contradicts and annoys me. Please punish him." The lion then declared, "The tiger will be punished with 5 years of silence." The donkey jumped. That could be. Yeah, donkey hurried he jumped cheerfully and he went on his way and started chanting, "The grass is blue. The grass is blue." The tiger accepted his punishment, but before he moved on, he asked the lion, "Your Majesty, what are you talking about? Why have you punished me? The grass is green." And the lion replied, "In fact, the grass is green." And the tiger said, "So why are you punishing me?" And then the lion replied, This has nothing to do with the question of whether the grass is green or blue. The punishment is because it is not possible for a brave and intelligent creature such as you to waste time arguing with a donkey, and on top of that to come and bother me with this question. No, the worst waste of time is arguing with that fool and fanatic who does not care about truth or reality, but only the victory of his beliefs and illusions. Never waste time on the arguments that don't matter. What is it? There are people who, no matter how much evidence we present to them, are not in the capacity to understand, and others are blinded by ego, hatred, and resentment, and all they want to do is be right, even when they're not. I just think that tweet was hilarious.
So I'm trying to unpack the message there.
There's a lot to unbox there. Our World Rugby, the donkey.
You could
is the referee in the
you could argue that Rassie himself here is the tiger arguing with the donkey of World Rugby, and why is he bothering to argue with the donkey?
Indeed,
he came out, and it doesn't matter if he's right about all of these refereeing infringements.
The saddest thing of all would be to go to a disciplinary hearing and debate all this with the donkey. That's possible there.
Yeah, it's definitely amusing. He's definitely one of the funner characters in World Rugby, and that did give me a crack up.
It gave me an absolute giggle, because he's so cheeky with them, and he does have a point, as the Springbok fans will say. Like his long video, although the execution and delivery of it slightly suspect, the points themselves were pretty cogent, bar one or two are mostly correct. Like, and you can do that, we do that as well, go through a game in retrospect, and it's like, that was a wrong decision, that probably should have gone this way. There's always that kind of feedback.
It's definitely going to be interesting to see what happens going forward. I know World Rugby are keen to throw the book at them, and they have, I think, Wales, Ireland, Scotland, England and Australia randomly lobbying at them to throw the book at Rassie at the moment, but it remains to be seen. I kind of feel like they should just park the whole mess and move on.
That's probably fair. Let him get out to the team and get on with the Rugby Championship.
Stop. It's not that important anyway.
It's not. But it could be a fun sideshow, and I expect with tweets like that it could be.
Yes, I'm sure he won't go quietly whatever happens. No. I don't know if he could be silenced for 5 years. But listen, we're going to park the show there ourselves and move on. We will see you guys next week. Enjoy the rugby this weekend. New Zealand and the Wallabies at the heart of that. Obviously that'll be a great game. Absolutely. And we'll see you next week for previews of more games as the Rugby Championship gets into its meat and the European season begins. All sorts of exciting games, and we'll keep you up to date on all of them in the weeks to come.
In the meantime, please do share, comment, like, subscribe, all of that good stuff. But in the meantime, we will sign off, and we'll see you next week, folks.
Bye bye. left and wide. Yeah, you got it.
I got it, but it only slid back.